Chapter 1874. Maid Laura's footsteps were somewhat fast. She rarely walked at such a fast pace in the palace, but the maids didn't have the time to think about the reason behind this. Tonight, something terrible had happened in the palace. Even the entire royal city was experiencing something incredible. At this time, several maids were guarding outside Princess Carol's room with pale faces. Ever since Queen Hilda sent Princess Carol back, she had been hiding in her room, refusing to see anyone. They didn't dare to offend the emotionally unstable Princess Carol. Even the servants and guards in the palace didn't dare. "Lady Laura, great, you're finally back. Where's the princess?" "She's in her room, she hasn't moved for quite some time. We didn't dare to disturb her." Laura didn't speak and just walked past the maids. Then she pushed open the door to Princess Carol's room and quickly went in, closing the door behind her. The room wasn't lit. Laura frowned and waved her hand, instantly lighting up the candlesticks in the room. She walked in and saw Princess Carol on the bed behind the screen. She was covered with a quilt and seemed to be trembling. Queen Hilda had left, and she was forced to leave. Some of the guards and maids in the square saw it. Laura had received similar reports on the way here. Now, the group of people who had hurt Queen Hilda were still outside the square. Although Laura wasn't present, Queen Hilda's huge illusory body couldn't be concealed. Laura saw with her own eyes the scene of the Dragon Queen's illusory body being destroyed by a golden light. She didn't know who made the move, but she was sure that the Dragon Queen had suffered a loss this time, and it wasn't a small loss. Moreover, Queen Hilda wasn't in the palace at this time. "Are you just going to hide here?" Looking at the trembling figure on the bed, Laura's expression was indifferent. "As the Queen's bloodline, how can you be so incompetent?" The quilt was moved away little by little, revealing Princess Carol's eyes that were almost squeezed out of her face. "Laura, do you know who you're talking to? You dare to be rude to me." Laura went forward and lifted the quilt. Then she grabbed Princess Carol's arm and violently pulled her out of the bed. At first, the princess was stunned. Then, she became furious. Then, she tried to resist. However, with her huge body, her resistance was to no avail. She was thrown to the ground by Laura. For a moment, she was at a loss. Her face was filled with disbelief as her lips trembled. "You dare to do this to me? Laura, you're crazy." He had forgotten his own identity. "You were sent by my mother to serve me." The princess of the kingdom once again received a slap that she shouldn't have received at her age. Several yellowish teeth flew out of Princess Carol's mouth. When the maid who had always been so docile suddenly became so unfamiliar, Princess Carol discovered that she couldn't think straight. She just subconsciously covered her swollen cheek and stared blankly at the condescending Laura. "Let me tell you," Laura indifferently said, "the so-called continent's dragon clan doesn't have princes and princesses. Every generation of dragon kings came to power through slaughter. As someone with the blood of the continent's dragon clan, you should understand one thing. In this clan, the so-called bloodline is nothing more than a joke. Only by having formidable strength can you have a position in the clan." Princess Carol opened her mouth. At this time, Laura took a step forward. Princess Carol panicked and quickly moved back. She was frightened and said, Don't hit me. Don't hit me. If it wasn't for Hilda's order, I wouldn't even bother to look at you." Laura directly kicked Princess Carol and sent her flying. Her heavy body was sent flying and almost hit the wall. At this time, Laura once again walked in front of Princess Carol, who was begging for mercy. Princess Carol was so frightened that she lost control of her bladder. Laura frowned and then shook her head. "Perhaps you really do have everything. But Hilda and King Amos turned you into a good-for-nothing. It's really sad, Your Highness. Don't hit me. Don't hit me." Looking at Princess Carol's incompetent appearance, Laura coldly snorted. She waved her hand and tore Princess Carol's clothes. Then she reached out and grabbed something from the gap between Princess Carol's thick flesh, the gap between Princess Carol's neck. It was a large golden chain with a pendant half the size of a palm. It looked like a small box. No. You can't take it away. Princess Carol clenched her teeth and said, Mother said that I can't give the thing inside. Laura coldly snorted and then raised her hand. Princess Carol curled up and held her head in fear. Don't hit me. Take it away, take it away. Don't hit me again. I beg you, Laura. She kept crying and begging for mercy. After a long time, she looked up in fear. But at this time, Laura was no longer in front of her. She even left the room. Princess Carol couldn't help but become absent-minded. Then her ugly face distorted. She grabbed a handful of gravel on the ground and crushed it. You dare hit me! You dare hit me! I won't let you go! I won't let you go! But at this time, Laura, who should have left, suddenly appeared in front of Princess Carol. The princess, whose expression was already distorted, moved her lips at this moment. Suddenly, her eyes rolled back and she fell to the ground with a bang. She had actually fainted from fright. Laura couldn't help but frown as she looked at the princess, who should have had the noblest bloodline in the world, but had been forcibly raised into a waste. Do your parents really love you? After staring for a moment, Laura slowly exhaled. Then she directly lifted Princess Carol's heavy body. She had obtained the key from Princess Carol, and because Queen Hilda had been driven away, this matter was much easier to accomplish. However, besides the key, Wally also needed something else: Elnis Kingdom's royal bloodline. Other than the Yamos king, Princess Carol was the only remaining member of the royal bloodline. She thought that Wally would need this waste princess. Soon, I will leave this world. Tang Tianlin felt that he hadn't been unconscious for a long time. When he woke up, he saw that he was in a very bad situation. He didn't even know where he was right now. He was probably in a secret room, similar to a cellar. It was dark, but he could still see. On the walls of the secret room, there were numerous strange symbols that emitted a dark red light. He was lying in the center of the secret room. His hands, feet, waist, and even neck were surrounded by a halo made of energy, firmly confining him to the floor. With him as the center, the entire floor of the secret room flashed with the strange blood-colored symbols that were connected to the walls. Right now, Queen Hilda was standing in front of him. This bewitching, seductive, and peerlessly beautiful dragon queen had even taken off all of her clothes. You woke up earlier than expected. Queen Hilda smiled at Tang Tianlin. I wanted you to wake up in bliss, but it seems that you can't wait. What do you want to do to me? Tang Tianlin asked calmly. The layout of this secret room and Queen Hilda's current appearance made Tang Tianlin unable to help but think that this was a preparation for some evil ritual. I want your heart of the sanctuary. Queen Hilda chuckled. It can make me stronger. Tang Tianlin was startled and hurriedly said, You are the Dragon Queen of the continent. You are already the most powerful existence in this world. Do you still need this thing? The sanctuary is a threat. Queen Hilda slowly sat on Tang Tianlin's body. Her fingers even gently scratched on Tang Tianlin's chest, leaving bloody marks. The pain penetrated into his bones. Tang Tianlin couldn't help but cry out in pain. Of course, I don't care about half of the sanctuary. Only those who have the heart of the sanctuary are trouble. Hilda retracted her finger and licked the blood on her fingertip. I'm very experienced. When I extract your sacred heart, not only will it not make you cry, but it will also make you feel a bliss you've never felt before. My sweat glands can secrete a special liquid. Through it, your feelings will be synchronized with mine. You can experience double the pleasure. Fuck. The chessboard's hint is for me to defeat this lewd woman on the battlefield of spirit and desire? A messy dragon queen? He didn't have time to think about this. At this moment, a strange fragrance wafted into his nose. Suddenly, a feeling he had never felt before filled his nerves. It was as if he had two bodies at this moment. The blood-red symbols on the walls and floor even came to life. Like insects, they crawled onto Tang Tianlin's body little by little. Queen Hilda sat down completely at this time. At this moment, she raised her head and pressed her hands on Tang Tianlin's chest. In an instant, her satisfied gasps resounded in the secret room. "That damned old woman! I'll be back! I'll be back for you right away! As long as this queen is willing to release the power to destroy this world." Tang Tianlin almost couldn't hear what the Dragon Race Empress was saying. His mind was currently buzzing and completely blank. Wave after wave of strange sensations washed over him, making it almost impossible for his body to resist. His pupils began to contract, his muscles began to wither, and his hair began to turn gray. A black gold ball of light slowly flowed out from his chest that was filled with blood. Queen Hilda became even crazier at this time. Her evil laughter was especially loud in this small secret room. "At the last moment of your life, I allow you to bid farewell to your short life." Queen Hilda lowered her head at this time, the smile on her face growing wider. But at this time, Queen Hilda saw Tang Tianlin's left arm. Under her devouring, not only was Tang Tianlin's left arm not affected in the slightest, it was even faintly changing. Tang Tianlin was unaware of this change at this time. His eyes were completely scattered. His mind was completely blank. Suddenly, he raised his left arm and punched Queen Hilda directly, sending her flying and crashing into the wall of the secret room. Queen Hilda, who was caught off guard, was not only shocked, but the blow to her chest actually made her innards churn. This punch was even more terrifying than Moses' sword. At this time, with the push of his left arm, Tang Tianlin's body slowly floated up, and then stood upright. Queen Hilda looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. She saw Tang Tianlin's eyes, but these were not the eyes that Tang Tianlin should have. At this time, Tang Tianlin's body was still withered, only his left arm was solid and full of vitality. Suddenly, the left arm swung out and directly grabbed Queen Hilda from the void. The queen's neck was tightly held at this time. No matter how she struggled, she could only feel a terrifying force completely sealing her body. Not only that, the power she stole from Tang Tianlin even crazily flowed back to Tang Tianlin. Even the real origin power that should have belonged to her was violently taken away by this left arm at this time. Gradually, wrinkles appeared on the Dragon Queen's body. Her hair began to gray, and her body gradually became thinner. At this time, Queen Hilda helplessly and powerlessly grabbed the left hand that was holding her throat, terrified. "You! Who are you? Who are you?" She did not get an answer. Like a flood, the power that was originally released quickly flowed out together with her consciousness. After an unknown period of time, the left hand that was holding the Dragon Queen suddenly loosened, and Queen Hilda directly fell to the ground like mud. At this time, Tang Tianlin's left arm was hanging down, and he was still standing expressionlessly. Not only did his body return to its original appearance, but there was even a faint luster of power flowing under his skin. Only to this extent. "It's not enough for me to use one blow." The voice came from Tang Tianlin's mouth. At this time, he lowered his head and muttered to himself, "Where is my original body? But finally, I'm back." Gradually, Tang Tianlin regained consciousness again. The first thing he did was to check himself. He found that not only did he not die as Queen Hilda said, but he even became more spirited than when he woke up in the cave under the palace last time. In addition, there was also Queen Hilda, who was lying on the ground like an old woman, her life and death unknown. Silence. How did he defeat her? Did he really do it? Chapter 1875. The group had been guarding the entrance of the secret passage in the armory for a long time. However, there was no movement. Judging by the time, there was more than enough time for a round trip, yet Lord Quark still had not returned. Did he run into any danger? Just as the guards were getting more and more worried, there was a sudden movement in the secret passage. Someone poked his head in and quickly turned around, saying, "He's back. Lord Quark is back." his colleague's excited voice echoed. Soon after, not only did they see Quark returning alone from a dangerous situation, they even saw a group of people who followed closely behind him. Yuro Jianli, Iron Face Marshal Jack, the messenger Shin Tianyun who had appeared before, and a group of black-armored soldiers. Chief. The group was shocked at first, then they were overjoyed. They all went forward and knelt before Sword Saint Yuro. It's great that you're back. Was it Mr. Quark who found you? Could this group of people really be smart? Quark looked at this group of excited fellows expressionlessly. Mr. Quark? Not long ago, they were still calling him Lord Quark. Get up and talk. Sword Saint Yuro said calmly, actually, there's nothing much to talk about. All of you go down now and make arrangements for the people outside. This secret passage was built when I founded the Guards Division. It's absolutely safe. Chief, you have foresight and are prepared for a rainy day, the group exclaimed. At this moment, a black-armored soldier behind Iron Face Marshal Jack took a few steps forward and said loudly, "Please clear this place quickly so that the following troops can arrive smoothly." The group was stunned. How could these people not recognize Iron Face Marshal and his iconic black-armored Soaring Eagle Legion? Let's do as he says. Sword Saint Yuro waved his hand and said, "Move everything here out and seal this place. Don't let anyone in for the time being. I'll give you 45 minutes to prepare the first batch of fleeing people. Organize the subsequent ones. Remember, don't mess up and don't mess up." "Yes, sir." After the group of subordinates left, Sword Saint Yuro suddenly looked at the silent Quark and said calmly, "Do you have anything to say to me?" Quark looked up and opened his mouth, but he hesitated. "Let's talk outside." Sacred Swordsman Li Yuluo nodded. After greeting Jack, he walked out of the armory of the Guards Division. Outside, Sacred Swordsman Li Yuluo was observing the chaos in the royal capital from the watchtower where he could see most of the garrison buildings. "Jack isn't here anymore. What do you want to ask?" At this moment, Quark's expression was solemn as he took a step forward. "Marshal, are you talking about what he intends to do?" "What do you mean?" Li Yuluo asked indifferently. Quark clenched his teeth and said, "About seizing power." The Sacred Swordsman then turned around and looked at Quark with an expressionless face. "Jack has already explained in the big tent on Mount Meteor. Why are you only asking now?" Quark quickly lowered his head and said, "Teacher was also in the big tent at that time. Since Teacher didn't say anything against it as a student, I dare not overstep my authority." "Then why are you asking now?" Quark's voice was even lower, but his heart was getting more and more nervous. He said carefully, "Teacher has always been the most trusted person by His Majesty's side. He is the foundation of the kingdom. I don't think Teacher would ever rebel. Perhaps there are some unspeakable difficulties in this." "Since there are unspeakable difficulties, why are you still asking?" Sacred Swordsman Li Yuluo said faintly. This Sacred Swordsman's eldest disciple in name suddenly felt uneasy. The Sacred Swordsman clearly did not intend to tell him everything. Perhaps the Sacred Swordsman had brought him to this small building to give him a chance to experience it himself for the sake of their years of friendship? Sacred Swordsman Li Yuluo's alliance with the Iron Marshal to seize power this time was real, but there were also some unspeakable secrets in this. Student has been rude." Quark took a deep breath and looked up. He said seriously, "No matter what Teacher wants to do, student will follow Teacher and worry for Teacher." "Really?" Sacred Swordsman Li Yuluo suddenly chuckled. "Even if you've seen the dead Sword Soul Mother Beast under the Sword Lake and know that I've been lying to you all this time?" Quark's heart immediately turned cold. A chill ran down his spine. He took 2 steps back in panic and then knelt down on both knees. His entire body prostrated as he said in fear, "Teacher, student knows his mistake. Student shouldn't have entered the sword catacomb at the bottom of the lake without permission. It's student's will that was not firm enough. Please punish me, Teacher." Don't you hate me? Sacred swordsman, Li Yulo asked curiously. Teacher, you're like a second parent to me. Quark's voice was sincere. Without teacher's nurturing, I'm just an orphan who could die at any time in a war-torn land. Regardless of whether there's a sword soul beast or not, teacher has given me enough. I'm just blinded by greed for a moment. But when I saw the dead sword soul mother beast, I felt relieved. How did you feel relieved? I'm curious. I'm looking forward to obtaining a sword soul beast and increasing my strength. Quark took a deep breath and said, It's like I'm possessed by a demon. Because of the existence of this greed, Quark's path of swordsmanship had not improved at all these years. When I saw the dead sword soul mother beast at the bottom of the lake, my heart was filled with rage. But after the rage passed, Quark suddenly realized that he had been wasting himself all these years. I seemed to have regained my passion for swordsmanship, but I did secretly sneak into the sword mound at the bottom of the lake. Teacher, please punish me. When I saw you at the Starfall Mountain, your swordsmanship had changed a little. Sacred swordsman Li Yulo said calmly, You're right. All these years, your swordsmanship has been stagnant. Now that you've found a new opportunity to improve, it's a good thing. I don't intend to blame you for the sword mound at the bottom of the lake because I did it on purpose. Quark was stunned. Sacred swordsman Li Yulo said, This is also a test for you. It's also the last test before you obtain your third sword soul beast. As he said that, a small ball of icy blue light emerged from Sacred Swordsman Li Yulo's palm. Within the ball of light, Quark could see a small sword the size of half a finger. This is... Sacred Swordsman said slowly, the sword soul mother beast can't hold on any longer. This is the third sword soul beast it nurtured with the last of its power before it died. I took it away and only left behind the broken sword mound. I wanted to see if you would secretly sneak into the sword lake. Quark opened his mouth, but it was as if all his strength had been sucked out of him. I shouldn't have gone down. I shouldn't have gone down, Sacred Swordsman Li Yulo said. If you didn't go down, I would have used my own origin to feed it. On the day it truly matures, it will definitely belong to you. Quark lowered his head and did not say anything. Sacred Swordsman Li Yulo said again, Even if you went down, I would have still given it to you. If it's really like what you said just now, that you've really seen through the key to your swordsmanship all these years. Quark subconsciously raised his head. His gaze was blank. Your sword force has changed, and it's even improved. Sacred Swordsman Li Yulo sighed and said, But it's clearly not like what you said. It's an improvement after letting go. This kind of thought that came from hatred, this old man can still distinguish it. In the end, you just don't want to give it to me. Quark gritted his teeth. He no longer knelt on the ground. Instead, he slowly stood up and said coldly, It doesn't matter how nice you make it sound. There are thousands of reasons, but it's all because you never wanted to give it to me. You can leave. Sacred Swordsman Li Yulo shook his head. This heart of hatred can help your swordsmanship improve greatly in a short period of time. As for how far you can go, it'll depend on your own luck. I've indeed imparted all my swordsmanship to you without holding back. The fate between you and me ends here. Why? Quark's gaze was filled with rage. He was so agitated that his entire body trembled. Why? All these years, I've followed you conscientiously. No matter what you wanted me to do, I've never resisted you. Even if I'm your dog, I'm still your most loyal dog. But why are you still unwilling to give the sword soul beast to me? The peace between man and nature is one thing. I admit that his innate talent is indeed greater than mine. But what about that Jillian? He's just a coachman in a weapons shop. It's only been a few days since he appeared. Just because he's a Highlander and possesses the bloodline of your so-called old friend, can you erase all my efforts all these years? Li Yulo, you're too biased. It's you who's never looked at me properly. Your swordsmanship has improved by 30%. Not bad. Sacred Swordsman Liulo said expressionlessly, but with this you're not qualified to speak to me like this. I don't accept this. Quark roared furiously and pulled out his sword. Dense killing intent condensed on the sword. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, the small building instantly split into two. The sword radiance that carried endless killing intent directly rushed toward Sacred Swordsman Liulo. The Sacred Swordsman's gaze focused and he snorted coldly. The small building that was split apart instantly collapsed with a loud bang. A figure could be seen flying out from the collapsed building. It was Quark. The sword in Quark's hand was broken. He fell to the ground and violently spat out a mouthful of blood. He quickly got up as if his soul had scattered. Ignoring his injuries, he turned around and jumped over the high wall in panic. Quark had already fled for some time. In the collapsed building, Sacred Swordsman Liulo sat silently on a fallen pillar. The icy blue small sword in his hand flickered from time to time. You don't have to be so strict with your own student, right? Suddenly, a deep voice came from beside Sacred Swordsman Liulo. The person who came was the kingdom's general, Iron Face Marshal Jack. It's because she's my student. Sacred Swordsman Liulo shook his head. Excessive doting may only make one more person like Princess Carol in this world. Marshal Jack shrugged and said, but I don't think that princess can be considered a person. Sacred Swordsman Liulo looked at Marshal Jack in a daze. That iron-faced marshal was silent for a while. Then, he suddenly bent down and said in a deep voice, I'm sorry. Because of me, your master-disciple relationship has become so stiff. Also, this time about Jillian. As he spoke, that iron-faced marshal slowly took off the black iron mask on his face. He sighed and said, perhaps it would have been better if I had let you kill me on the battlefield back then. The moment the mask was taken off, one could see that this iron-faced marshal had a face that was 80% or 90% similar to the peace between man and nature. King of Akkadias, now is not the time for you to reveal your identity. Sacred Swordsman Liulo said calmly, after all, I was once a Highlander. Get ready, Yamos should have been waiting for a long time. Sacred Swordsman Liulo put away his icy blue sword and jumped to the highest place in the guards' division, a bell tower. Sacred Swordsman Liulo rolled up his sleeves. Then, with a sudden force, he directly rang the bell of the bell tower. The bell rang loudly. Just a Highlander. Jack, who put on his iron mask again, silently looked at the back of the person who rang the bell. But no matter what, you are still my royal brother. King Amos was wiping his lips with a napkin. In front of him, there was a vague figure that had been standing for a long time, Gu. Before this, Gu, who was like a shadow beside King Amos, had already told him everything he saw. If that's the case, you've died again. The Yamos king had a curious look in his eyes. How many times do you have to die before you really die? There shouldn't be a next time, Gu said calmly after a moment of silence. The person you're talking about, I've asked the maid to invite him in. Yamos put down his napkin and smiled. Are you interested in meeting him? What do you want to do? Gu frowned. They even forced Hilda to retreat. This is the current empress of the Dragon Clan. I have never seen the empress of the Dragon Clan in such a sorry state. The Yamos king said indifferently, there's nothing to be curious about. Whether it's the dragons of the continent or the human race, or even the Golden Age that has already been destroyed, as long as the wheel of fate moves forward, we will all be crushed in the end. Maybe in a few years or decades there will be people who exclaim that King Amos, who has conquered the world, will be defeated in the end or something like that. You have seen through it all. King Amos shook his head. I can't see through it all. Otherwise, I wouldn't be like this, struggling no matter what. You really don't want to meet him? I think it will be interesting if you meet him again. There's no need. Gu replied and instantly disappeared. After a while, the maids led Boss Luo and Nan Xiaonan into the luxurious restaurant. King Amos stood up with a silver spoon in his hand. He gently knocked on the glass, making a crisp sound. "Welcome to tonight's guest." King Amos knocked on the crystal glass again with the spoon. Nan Xiaonan was stunned. She asked subconsciously, "The bell?" It was the sound of a big bell. It came from outside the palace. Hashtag 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 PS. As usual. Chapter 1876. Because of an unknown mutation, you swallowed the power of the Dragon Queen. You got Heart of the Sanctuary *1. You got Heart of the Sanctuary *1. You got Physical Enhancement. You got Heart of the Sanctuary *1. Your endurance has been greatly improved, your skills. A series of mental prompts were flashing crazily in Tang Tianlin's mind. He didn't even have time to digest these prompts from the chessboard. He only felt that his brain was about to explode with information. It was like hundreds of flies dancing crazily in his ears. Even so, Tang Tianlin still had no idea how he had managed to escape under such circumstances, or how he had gained so much power from the Dragon Empress. Was it Miss Gong Lina who did it? Since there was no trace of a third person on the scene, the only reasonable explanation Tang Tianlin could think of was this. As Gong Lina's servant, once he died in the world of the chessboard, Gong Lina, as the master, would obviously fall into the trap and enter the punishment roulette. Obviously, in order not to let him fall into the trap, Gong Lina would definitely not watch her servant die. Although since entering the range of the royal city as a servant, he couldn't contact the master. Tang Tianlin didn't know what happened outside the chessboard. But perhaps the masters outside the chessboard should know the situation inside the chessboard. Perhaps Gong Lina had some function card in her hand that could allow him to escape from this danger, and even get enough benefits. Just like before, she deliberately let him die to satisfy the Death Walker profession. However, when he thought about the process, it was a little. Looking at Hilda, the incomparably aged Dragon Empress, whose body and face were completely ruined, old Tang, who was a normal male, fell silent at this moment. He tried not to think about these things. Who wouldn't? Tang Tianlin let out a heavy sigh. Suppressing the discomfort in his heart, he flipped Queen Hilda over to see if she was still breathing. Even so, Tang Tianlin did not let down his guard against Queen Hilda. He had already suffered once, so this time he was even more cautious. He saw that Queen Hilda, who had been flipped over, was breathing weakly. She had already woken up, but her gaze was unfocused and she seemed extremely weak. Old Tang and Queen Hilda looked at each other. After a moment of silence, Old Tang said with a complicated expression, "There's a saying that goes, those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. Is there anything you want to say?" Tang Tianlin had learned his lesson this time. He was afraid that Norma would really die before he could finish listening to her last words, just like in the underground cave. Who knew how many tricks the chessboard had up its sleeves to play with people in the dark? What do you want me to say? Queen Hilda's voice was hoarse at this time. Do you want me to beg for mercy, or do you want me to say something remorseful so that you can mock me? Tang Tianlin thought for a moment and said, I shouldn't have saved you. Now that I think about it, there was no need for me to do anything at that time. That thug was probably your prey. Queen Hilda smiled coldly. Tang Tianlin frowned. As the queen of the dragon race, why were you there and injured? What happened to you? Who hurt you? Queen Hilda suddenly said at this time, How many hearts of the sacred domain did you get? Tang Tianlin did not speak, but only frowned. Queen Hilda said, It doesn't matter if you don't tell me. This number is definitely not small. It's something I looted, and I know the loss. But don't think that after getting so many hearts of the sacred domain, you can really become strong. You don't know how to balance, control these hearts of the sacred domain. What are you trying to say? Tang Tianlin suddenly said in a low voice. They will conflict with each other in your body, and in the end, you will not be able to control them. Perhaps you will soon explode and die. Queen Hilda mocked at this time, but at the same time she panted again. If I die, you won't live for long. Queen of the dragon race, do you know that your credibility is very low? Tang Tianlin shook his head. Do you think I will still believe you? Up to you. Queen Hilda slowly closed her eyes. You can kill me here and now, as long as you don't regret it. After something happens, you won't be able to find anyone to help you solve this problem. Use the power that originally belonged to me to your heart's content. You will feel endless pain sooner. Old Tang really did not want to kill Queen Hilda directly. This was all forced by the chessboard. But he would not easily trust Queen Hilda at this time. In that case, you can stay here for the time being. Tang Tianlin stood up and searched for the skills that had appeared out of nowhere on the skill list. Then, he chose one of them. Release. In an instant, many green plants sprouted from the cold floor, and at the same time, they wrapped around Queen Hilda's body, and finally turned into a short tree that held up the ceiling of the secret room. At this time, Queen Hilda's whole body was wrapped up by the short tree's roots, and was firmly embedded in the trunk. Queen Hilda did not say a word, and only watched silently. Tang Tianlin chose another skill, and saw the floor split open again, and then 3 large bodies began to gradually form. In the end, the mud and stone combined to become 3 strong stone men. At this time, the stone men were squatting on the ground, motionless, but one could feel the great power contained in them. They were guards and at the same time guards. After doing this, Tang Tianlin looked at Queen Hilda and found a way to leave the secret room. The prevalence of the living dead in the king's city must be Wally's doing. Tang Tianlin knew that this night would be the key to clearing the chessboard game. He did not want to stay in the chessboard world, so he could not delay what was going to happen next. As for the explosion that Queen Hilda said, if he could clear the chessboard game, he would naturally be able to leave the chessboard world, and probably would not have to worry about the problem of this servant's body. Besides, even if there was no danger of exploding, he still had Norma's curse before her death. As the saying goes, a dead pig is not afraid of boiling water. After old Tang left, the stone men in the secret room slowly stood up, and formed a triangle to guard the short tree. Her grayish-white hair fell down and covered Empress Hilda's aged face. But within her hair, the dragon Empress' eyes gradually began to shine with a light of spirit. At this time, in front of Queen Hilda, a colorful ball of light slowly appeared. The ball of light floated just like that. Queen Hilda's lips moved slightly, whispering something. The colorful ball of light scattered little by little, and finally adhered to her body. At the same time, the tree roots that imprisoned her were swallowed by a golden flame. Suddenly, Queen Hilda fell down. She fell to the ground and struggled to get up, feeling that every movement was like draining the little strength that was left in her. I didn't expect. The one who saved me in the end was the divine armor. Queen Hilda laughed at herself at this time. Light Dragon King. My grandmother. Queen Hilda leaned on the wall with difficulty, looking at the 3 people who were walking towards her step by step. The one hidden in the armor. Your restless soul, can you still save me, this poor guy? A low roar suddenly sounded in the secret room. A building that was almost 10 meters tall turned into ashes in front of Tang Tianlin's eyes. This directly made Tang Tianlin think of a suitable adjective: annihilation. This power. He even faintly felt frightened by this terrible power. This was just a small blow from him, and it couldn't even be said that he used much strength. He didn't even feel that the heart of the sanctuary would conflict with each other like Queen Hilda said. Even so, he wasn't too surprised. In his opinion, no matter how powerful he was now, it was probably arranged by Gong Lina as the master. Her purpose was clear. Obviously, it was to deal with the last guardian, so that Gong Lina could win the game in the end. As for what Wally had told him before, as long as he could successfully leave the chessboard world, he would basically inherit the power he gained in the chessboard world. Unless his original power was stronger than when he was in the chessboard world, he wouldn't be affected. Obviously, as a person in the modern world, even if he had the ability to trigger the mutation of his left arm, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to kidnap House from Hua Nation and bring him all the way to Wally's castle in Britain to find out the truth about the perfect man experiment and the location of the perfect man's body. However, could such power really appear in the real world? Tang Tianlin instinctively didn't believe this. At this time, he didn't even know how much damage he could cause after devouring Queen Hilda's power. Even he himself was afraid. This sound is, at this time, a series of rapid and loud bell chimes interrupted Tang Tianlin's thoughts. He subconsciously looked in the direction of the bell chimes. It seems that only the headquarters of the garrison division has such a bell tower. Tang Tianlin couldn't help but frown. 3 heads quietly popped up on the towering palace wall. Very good. The scary guy who sniped us in the secret passage to the palace last time seems to be not here. After observing for a while and making sure that there was no one guarding this place, and that it was relatively safe, they quickly climbed over the wall and landed on the ground. Then, they quickly sprinted into a secluded room. The 3 people in the castle. They couldn't find their temporary captain. They couldn't find him. They could only wait for him to come and find them. They also couldn't find Mr. Wally. They couldn't find him either. As the saying went, Grandpa doesn't love you, Grandma doesn't love you. It seemed to describe the situation of the 3 people in the castle. At this time, Dr. Gores had already given up on the idea of finding Boss Luo and Mr. Wally. Instead, he encouraged Miss Maid and Sneeve to go directly to the most important place, the final station of the chessboard game. Summon the Guardian's altar. We'll go to this place and not go anywhere else. Dr. Gores instigated. No matter if it's Mr. Wally or Mr. Luo, if they want to pass the level, they must defeat the Guardian. Therefore, no matter who it is, they will go to the altar. We'll squat at the altar. This time, we're not going to find them, but we're waiting for them to appear. This seemed to be the last stubbornness of Dr. Gores. He even said with a stern expression, as for the altar to summon the Guardian, whether it was Dr. Gores or Maid Tina, they had entered it more than once. Even Sneeve had entered it when he was young. The palace of the Elnis Kingdom hasn't changed for so many years. Dr. Gores chuckled. It's really convenient for us. It should be this way. Now the whole King's city is in chaos, and the palace is also in a mess. There are no obstacles on the way. Good luck. A figure under the curtain of night was hiding behind the 3 people in the ancient castle, neither too slowly nor too quickly. They were unable to detect it. At the moment when the bell rang, Gongsun Ernyang suddenly frowned slightly, and thoughtfully looked towards the direction where the bell came from. King Amos had already noticed the existence of Gongsun Ernyang. At this moment, he waved his hand to let the maids invite the guests to sit and serve them food. The food wasn't very sumptuous. That's all we can prepare now. King Amos smiled at this moment. It's a bit chaotic outside, so this place is probably the only quiet place in the palace. But these are all good ingredients. I've already asked the chefs to make them as well as possible. Boss Luo nodded with a smile. Since they're from the palace, of course they're good. Thank you for your invitation, Your Majesty. I'm the one who should thank you and all of you. King Amos smiled. Thank you for coming, and also thank you for letting me see an unprecedented drama. Thank you even more for defeating Hilda. This is my toast to all of you. King Amos picked up the wine cup, drank it in one gulp, and then turned the cup upside down to show his sincerity. Seeing this, Gongsun Ernyang suddenly said, Your wife was bullied, and as a husband, you didn't do anything. But you're still here toasting to your enemy. The King of Elnis, you're quite a talent. I don't know you, madam. King Amos said indifferently, although I don't know you, I know you're the mother of Mose, the guest of Jack's family. Gongsun Ernyang frowned, and her eyes were like lightning. King Amos said slowly, After Mose entered Jack's family, you've secretly appeared a few times to observe Mose's life. Of course, those who discovered you are now gone. Gongsun Ernyang said indifferently, so those spies in Jack's family are all your people. I'm afraid that in the entire kingdom, all the noble families with some power, you're the king's spy. Nan Xiaonan suddenly said, I didn't expect that even with Gongsun Ernyang's strength, you'd still be discovered by the spies. This witch from another world was really the kind of person who would jump in whenever she saw a crack. I'm just too lazy to care, Gongsun Ernyang said indifferently. I'm not in the mood to find them one by one. King Amos said with a serious face, I think this madam just wanted to give the spies a warning, so she exposed herself. Of course, I've been very careful not to do anything to anger her. Your kingdom, other than having too many spies, too many killings, too suspicious, and married a wife who doesn't know what she's talking about, there aren't any other flaws. Gongsun Ernyang said indifferently, Forget it, most kings are like this. Invite us in and tell us what you want to say. I still have to see my son. Mose was still outside the palace, carrying the iron rod on his back. He gritted his teeth and straightened his back. I guess this madam is already on the same side as this mister. King Amos thought for a while and said, Even if they're not on the same side, they should be from the same place. According to the secret records of the royal family, the visitors from outer space ultimately need the royal family to summon the guardian of the kingdom. I can summon the guardian of the kingdom for you, but there's a condition. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously looked at Boss Luo, obviously waiting for him to make a decision. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, I heard that every time the guardian of the kingdom is summoned, the life of a pure blood of the royal family must be sacrificed. I wonder who your majesty is planning to sacrifice this time? It was known that the royal bloodline was only King Amos and his daughter with Queen Hilda, Princess Carol. Of course it's me. King Amos smiled and said, As a father, how can I sacrifice my own child for myself? Gongsun Ernyang couldn't help but frown. As the first servant hidden in the chessboard world, it was hard to believe that she didn't know what was going on in the chessboard world. Obviously, she knew very well what kind of person Princess Carol of the Kingdom of Elnis was. King Amos, Gongsun Ernyang said slowly, if you really mean it, I can only say that you're indeed an unqualified father. As parents, your way of raising children is simply absurd. King Amos laughed and said, Everyone, follow me to the altar to summon the guardian of the kingdom. Your Majesty, I didn't agree. Boss Luo shook his head at this time. And your condition? The Yamos king couldn't help but pause, and then he laughed bitterly. It seems that I didn't manage to take advantage of this gentleman. My condition is actually very simple. I hope that all of you, all of the extraterrestrials here, can leave our world after I die. Of course, I can't stop the next batch from entering, so my only request is that all of you leave this time. How about it? Nan Xiaonan subconsciously looked at Gongsun Ernyang. Leave, she would leave, but the point was that Gongsun Ernyang seemed to be a bit reluctant to leave, and most importantly, Gongsun Ernyang was really not with them. ########PS 1/1. Chapter 1877. The guards in the palace were already in a mess. This was because they discovered that in this chaotic moment, they couldn't receive any effective orders. The entire palace's security system seemed to have been paralyzed. Everywhere was filled with fear. Some people said that they saw a dead person suddenly come back to life and bite anyone they saw. The maids in the palace were scared out of their wits. Their screams filled every corner of the palace. Everyone was in danger. It was said that the entire royal city, outside of the palace, had fallen. The living had turned into bloodthirsty monsters. The professionals who took advantage of the competition were wantonly destroying this great city. You don't believe me? I saw it with my own eyes. The queen has been killed. His Majesty is now being held hostage in Princess Carol's palace. It's true. I'll bet my dead father. Quickly run, it'll be over if we're late. What are you holding in your hand? You actually stole from the palace. Everyone is like this. Do you want it? If you don't want it, then I'll take your share. Don't. The things here aren't valuable. Let's go to His Majesty's study and see if we can pick up some leftovers. Chaos was everywhere. At this time, in the courtyard of the palace, a figure was walking quickly. It was Princess Carol's head maid, Laura. In an instant, the guards who bumped into Laura suddenly cried out in alarm. However, something even worse happened later. At this moment, they even directly sucked in a breath of cold air. Heavens, what did they just see? They actually saw Laura, the head maid, dragging Princess Carol on the ground. Along the way, there were traces of the princess' body rubbing against the ground. Seeing Princess Carol's clothes being torn, the guards couldn't react for a moment. Lady Laura, this is, they said in a trembling voice, their bodies instinctively trembling. Since you've seen it, then there's no other way. The head maid said expressionlessly. After that, the guards couldn't hear anything else. Their heads flew high in an instant and then rolled on the floor. Their blood was stained with sand and mud, making their heads look like sesame balls. But at this time, a group of dark shadows rushed into the courtyard. They roared and flew directly toward Laura like crazy. She was obviously not afraid. She just frowned because she knew that these things were made by Wally. Could it be that the changes in the king's city had already spread to the royal palace? The speed of the spread was far beyond Laura's expectations. However, there was no time to think about it. These mutated guys had no reason to speak of. Laura coldly snorted. These were just ordinary maids and bodyguards who had mutated. They weren't even trouble. But just as Laura was about to deal with the maids and guards who were obstructing her, they stopped. He stood there quietly like a human-shaped wooden stake, only swaying his body slightly. His body would occasionally twitch a few times. Laura was startled, then she suddenly turned around. Wally! Isn't the one standing behind the mutated maid and guard Mr. Varley? How did you? Laura was surprised. Varley should have been imprisoned in the healing pool by her. She saw Mr. Varley smile at this time. Laura, for you, I can return to this world again. For you, I can crawl back from the hell of death. But it's not a fatal injury. How can I let the one I love take risks alone for me? I hate these words of yours. Laura responded indifferently. Mr. Varley walked in, and the maids and guards around him gave way. He went straight to Laura, and regardless of her reaction, he directly hugged her into his arms. Then you will hate me for a lifetime, because I will always say these words to you. That was the honest body that she was too ashamed to speak. Laura no longer struggled in Mr. Varley's arms. Instead, she hugged him tightly. She even buried her face in his chest and faintly said, I can't go back. I caught Carol. This time, the Empress really won't let me go. No matter what, she can't come to my world. Varley softly said, maybe she can't take care of herself right now. At this time, Laura suddenly pushed Varley away and solemnly said, Empress Hilda seems to have been injured by someone. I can't imagine that this world has the power to knock her down. According to the descriptions of the maids present, it seems to be a woman of some age. Did you bring her here? A woman? Mr. Varley was deep in thought at this time. After a while, he muttered, About Hilda, let's talk about it later. Since Princess Carol has been captured, that is to say, the key has been obtained, right? She really wanted to take out the necklace she tore off from Princess Carol's neck right now. However, Laura shook her head at this time. I didn't find the key on Carol's body. You didn't find the key? Mr. Varley was startled. You told me that the key is on Princess Carol. I don't know. Laura shook her head again. I really didn't find the key. Are you blaming me? Mr. Varley chuckled at this time. At first, I did intend to let you help me get the key, but I only let you help me. I never thought that you would do it. So, whether you found the key or not, you are still the little Laura I met in the valley many years ago." She excitedly buried herself in Mr. Varley's chest again, and faintly said, "Now, what are you going to do? If you can't find the key, you have no way to leave here. What about your mission? In any case, I'm not going to leave empty-handed." Mr. Varley thought for a moment. "At least, Princess Carol, the only one who can awaken the bloodline of the kingdom's guardian, is in our hands. But the ceremony to awaken the kingdom's guardian has always been known only by the King of Elnis." Mr. Varley said indifferently, "I have come to this world many times. Every time I leave this world through the same method. Some things, even if I don't understand, I know how to do it." In other words, he also knew the ceremony to awaken the kingdom's guardian. He could even do it. He really studied everything in this chessboard world diligently, and he worked very hard in this chessboard world. Second Madame Gongsun, Boss Luo, and Nan Xiaonan had different goals. At this time, King Amos had already understood this point from the subtle expression on Nan Xiaonan's face. In the situation where the parties who reached a deal had different opinions, it seemed that his request couldn't be easily agreed. "I won't leave here for the time being." Second Madame Gongsun was more direct at this time. This straightforwardness made King Amos fall into a short silence. He turned to Boss Luo. The King of Elnis was very afraid of this mysterious young man. He could only accept his identity as a servant. However, according to the report from Ancient, that was not the power that a servant should have in the records of the royal family. Indeed, according to the records of the royal family, these servants from the outer world had always been very powerful and had many terrifying and strange means. However, controlling life and death, even the gods of the Golden Age, who had not fallen, could not do it easily, and the one controlling life and death was an ancient, not an ordinary person. "I'll leave here," Boss Luo said indifferently. "It has nothing to do with your Majesty's condition, because I'll leave here anyway." King Amos was silent again. After a long time, the king said slowly, "In that case, follow me. I'll let you see the so-called kingdom's guardian." "I'm not interested," Second Madame Gongsun said indifferently. "I'm going to see Mose." Then, Second Madame Gongsun left, but before she left, she glanced at Boss Luo, which meant that what she said was still valid. Boss Luo felt that it was interesting at this time. He had been in the chessboard world for a while, but it seemed that he had not done many business. Now, he met a guy who wanted to sell to him one after another. "Do we really not need to care about Second Madame Gongsun?" Nan Xiaonan whispered at this time. "Although I don't know what she did, it seems that she has reached the limit of this world. If she suddenly makes trouble, I'm afraid it will be troublesome." Boss Luo blinked at this time as if to say, "We haven't seen the guardian yet." At this time, King Amos was walking slowly. Only now did Nan Xiaonan discover something. Under those loose robes, this Yamos king's body seemed to be abnormally thin to the point of being withered. But if one did not look at him closely, one would not be able to see it. There was something wrong with the king's body. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously thought of Queen Hilda, who was beaten and ran away, and gradually had an idea. Is it the legendary sitting on the ground and sucking soil, a humanoid, dragon-shaped juicer? The eyes of your female companion remind me of those dancers I met in the chaotic bars when I was young and adventurous. The Yamos king smiled faintly. It's easy to read their thoughts in their eyes, but it's clear that they don't have such thoughts in their hearts. Nan Xiaonan instantly narrowed her eyes, like a hibernating poisonous snake. "You see, now it's more like it," King Amos said at this time. Nan Xiaonan immediately shrugged, as if she did not hear it. Boss Luo suddenly said at this time, "Your Majesty's spies are all over the world. I think there's no secret that can be hidden from your eyes and ears. I'm curious about something. I don't know if your Majesty intends to answer my question. Just say it." The Yamos king waved his hand rather straightforwardly and even smiled. "What do you want to know?" How did Mr. Max die? Boss Luo asked. King Amos, who was walking forward, suddenly stopped, and then strode forward. Max, he asked for it. Who asked him to offend so many people? As far as I know, Mr. Max seemed to have only offended the dragon race on the continent. Boss Luo at this time said casually. The stargazer of the garrison division extracted some dragon's breath at the scene of Mr. Max's death. King Amos was more direct at this time, and he clapped his hands. That's right. The dragon race on the continent has been chasing Max for many years, and now they finally found and killed him. Well, it's very reasonable. That's true. Boss Luo smiled and said, It's indeed reasonable. Most people are looking for a reasonable reason most of the time. King Amos said casually, You want to ask me the reason why I would rather sacrifice myself for all of you to agree to leave this world? At least, that's what it seems to be now. Boss Luo nodded slightly. King Amos immediately said seriously, Because I'm the monarch of this country. Since I inherited the throne of this country, I have the obligation to protect the people of this country. Your goal is to protect the country, and you even did not hesitate to turn the capital into a purgatory. As the monarch, I can't let this pain continue. I think it's time for me to shoulder my responsibility. Is this reason enough? So, you're really a good monarch? Nan Xiaonan squinted at him. She had seen many people who lied with their eyes wide open, so many that she could not remember their faces, but she would definitely remember King Amos's face in the future. It was rare to see someone who could lie with his eyes wide open and be so self-righteous. If a country wants to prosper, it needs a good monarch. King Amos said calmly, The responsibility of the royal family is to do everything possible to cultivate a qualified monarch. Nan Xiaonan immediately felt that she had found a loophole, so she inserted the needle without hesitation. Your Majesty, if that's the case, your teaching method is really novel. It must have been hard on you to be able to teach such a peerless Princess Carol. My child. King Amos smiled and said, She was very cute when she was young. Maybe. Nan Xiaonan shook her head. It was really hard for her to associate Princess Carol with being cute. We're here. King Amos pointed at a building in front of them and said calmly. It was actually a circular palace. I see it, the Hall of Guardians. At this moment, Dr. Girth looked delighted as he quickened his pace. It seems that we're the earliest to arrive. The Hall of Guardians. The last dignity of the Kingdom of Elnus. Looking at the circular palace in front of them, Laura said softly, Even I have never set foot inside. I don't know what method King Yamos used to get Queen Hilda to promise not to invade this place. Now you can go in and take a look. Mr. Varley chuckled. Chapter 1878. 371. 372. One after another, Mose did the exact same thing that Gongsun Ernyang asked him to do. In fact, his hands had already crushed the stone slabs on the square. Although Mose was big, he was not strong enough to crush the stone slabs. Everything was because of the black iron rod he was carrying on his back. Heavy, incomparably heavy. Every time Mo Sang crouched down and straightened his body, he was squeezing out all the strength in his body. Mo Sang had not even reached half of what he needed to do, but he was already sweating profusely. However, he was born with this kind of stupidity. As long as Gongsun Ernyang did not tell him to stop, he would not stop until he fainted. Perhaps it was because he had hit his head too often when he was young that he had become stupid. Gongsun Ernyang thought to herself. At this moment, she was silently looking at Mo Sang. She thought that if this silly child could slack off behind her back just once, she wouldn't have to worry so much. By the way, Mother, I've already taken responsibility for a woman on the road. Mose suddenly raised his head and said, I saw it clearly. It's just as you said. Her back is big, so she must be fertile. After I'm done here, I'll settle everything and strive to give birth to a fat baby next year. If I use the Xian Yuan Yu Heart Sutra that you taught me, it will definitely work. The 2 concubines that the general gave me were taken off the bed by me every day. Mother, the things you taught me are really amazing. Gongsun Ernyang was silent for a moment. I regret teaching you. I'll add another 500. All right. Mose took a deep breath, and the muscles on his arms bulged. Gongsun Ernyang rubbed between her eyebrows. Back then, how did she come up with the idea of adopting this guy? Mose didn't know about his background. He even believed that his mother and his father, whom he had never met, made a mistake when they were young and gave birth to him. As for his father, it was just as his mother had said. He died on the battlefield and only his ashes came back. "Oh right, Mother." Mose raised his head and asked energetically, "Previously, Her Majesty said that I was a leftover." "Leftovers, I know. My father is dead, so there's only you and me left, so there's no problem with me being a leftover. But Her Majesty also said that I'm some titan or something." "What the hell is that?" "That's nothing." Gongsun Ernyang sighed and said, "That's a race. It's the name of your own race. It's called the Sky Titan." Mose was startled. "Mother, are you also a titan?" "I'm not." Gongsun Ernyang said calmly, "Your father is." "What number am I?" Mo Sang was shocked. He looked at Gongsun Ernyang pitifully and said, "Mother, I forgot how many people I've counted. Can I start counting from the 200th one?" Perhaps he felt that starting from the 200th was already a small victory from the prestige of his family. Therefore, under Mo Sang's longing gaze, Gongsun Ernyang sighed and nodded. Mo Sang felt as if he had really won a small victory at the hands of this parent. His mood was immediately lifted. Gongsun Ernyang sighed and said, "Tell me, if I really let this go, how are you going to live?" "Mother, what did you say? What do you mean by living? Am I living well?" Mo Sang raised his head in surprise, then smiled foolishly and said, "My 2 concubines also praised me like this. Mother, you're amazing. You even know this. Let's add another 1,000. Okay. Gongsun Ernyang pinched her eyebrows again, then looked at the depths of the palace. That should be where the guardian's palace was. Gongsun Ernyang pondered for a moment, then suddenly looked at Mo Sang and said, "You continue to stay here. Don't get up until you finish. Also, no matter what, you must remember not to let the iron rod leave you. Mother has to do something. I'll come back to see you when I'm done." "Mother, how long will you be gone for? What are you going to do? Have I finished it for you? If it goes well, I'll be back before dawn." Gongsun Ernyang shook her head and her gaze softened a little. "You don't have to worry about Mother's matters. Besides this matter, you can't do it. Don't ask too much. I'm leaving. Remember what I said." "Okay." When he raised his head again, Gongsun Ernyang had already disappeared. Mo Sang seemed to have already gotten used to it and continued his exercise. When he was in the countryside, his mother had tried to make him do similar exercises. In a dark room, a pair of eyes were vigilantly looking at the streets of the king's city. There were flashes of light in this person's arms from time to time. He was hiding something that glowed in his arms. Or, he didn't even have the confidence to pass the first stage of the competition's elimination stage. He was only encouraged by his companions to join in the fun. However, this precious orb, this orb that could make him the husband of the princess of the kingdom, this orb that could even be exchanged for the right to use the dragon's sacred pond once, was now in his arms. It wasn't a dream, but it was indeed like a dream. He had to be careful, extremely careful. As long as he could hold on until the end, bring the orb to the palace, and give it to the Dragon Queen, he would have everything. So at this time, he had to be careful. He had been hiding in this place for a long time, and didn't move at all. He didn't know how many people he had seen killing each other on the streets, and how many humans had turned into bloodthirsty monsters wandering around. He didn't know what was happening outside. He just wanted to wait for the safest time to leave this place, and then go to the palace as fast as he could. At this moment, his entire brain was already unable to think properly due to the fact that he had obtained the orb. This orb seemed to have some kind of magical power, as if it was constantly urging him to move forward. These guys seemed to be heading in the same direction? Suddenly, the bloodthirsty mutated humans on the street seemed to be attracted by something at this time, and began to slowly gather and move in the same direction. This might be a good thing, he thought to himself, because in this way he could avoid a lot of danger. At this time, there were very few professionals still active on the street, and even if there were, most of them were seriously injured and had to hide. Here's the chance. He took a deep breath and was about to leave this hiding place. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared on the street. The lucky people hiding here were shocked. They saw this figure walking on the long street like a god of death. He pointed at a long sword and was actually crazily slaughtering the mutated humans on the street. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a madman, but he was too powerful. Even those mutated professionals couldn't resist the sword of the killing god. He didn't know when, but on this street, there was a river of blood. The blood gathered and slowly flowed along the cracks of the street, and finally flowed into the sewer. Facing such a terrible killing god, how could he dare to show up at this time? He immediately reached out to cover his mouth, and then suddenly squatted down, afraid that his gaze would be seen by the other party. But he was too nervous, and the moment he squatted down, he accidentally knocked over the flower table next to him. Seeing the small bonsai on the flower table was about to fall, he was suddenly scared out of his wits, and quickly caught it with both hands, steadily. He couldn't help but gasp, and weakly leaned on the wall under the windowsill. "So the orb is with you." Suddenly, a voice sounded. He who had just leaned on the wall subconsciously opened his eyes wide, and saw that the killing god on the street had appeared in front of him. He suddenly shivered, and after a roar, he instantly waved his weapon and attacked with all his strength. But a cold light flashed. It was as if he could see his own body, his head, moving away from his body. He could even see the light emitted by the orb in his bosom. Maybe this is the will of the heavens? The man with disheveled hair took out a glowing orb from the dead professional's arms and placed it in front of his eyes, sizing it up carefully. The light of the orb illuminated the face of Brother Ger, the man with disheveled hair. He was Quark, who had escaped from the guards' division in a sorry state. Ever since he was seen through by sacred swordsman Liulo, and finally escaped from the guards' division in a panic, Quark had been slaughtering those mutated humans on the street like a madman. The resentment, unwillingness, and rage in his heart desperately needed a way to vent. Killing was a method that was more direct and simple than anything else. He could not even remember how many people had died under his sword along the way, but it was not enough. Far from enough. The jealousy and rage in his heart was like a bottomless abyss, and no matter how many lives were buried, it was far from enough, until he held the orb in his hand. Maybe this is the will of the heavens. Quark's gaze was now chaotic, and he muttered to himself, "Even if they don't give me the sword soul beast, as long as I have this orb, I can also become a sacred. I can prove that I'm better than anyone else. Liulo, I'll make a comeback, and soon." The orb in his hand shone even more fiercely. It even suddenly stirred up and became scorching hot, as if it was going to fly out of his hand. A dense killing intent flashed across Quark's eyes. He turned around abruptly and shouted coldly, "Who's hiding here?" The door of the dark room was slowly pushed open with a squeak. Quark's gaze sharpened, and the long sword in his hand struck out in an instant. His swordsmanship was the true inheritance of sacred swordsman Liulo. His swift sword was as fast as lightning, but Quark did not take the other party's life in the end. The long sword grazed the other party's throat in an extremely thrilling manner because at that moment, Quark noticed that the person who pushed the door open was an old woman. Her face was full of wrinkles, grayish-white hair, and skin that was as dry as tree bark. Maybe she's hiding here. She's the original owner of the house, but the old woman can't escape to the streets, so she can only hide in the house. The thought suddenly flashed across Quark's mind. I'm in a good mood. You may leave. Quark sheathed his sword and said faintly, whether you live or die, you'll have to fend for yourself. This orb. The old woman, whose face was originally filled with panic, suddenly squinted her eyes. It's mine. What did you say? Quark instantly frowned. However, in that brief moment of astonishment, Quark discovered to his horror that the old woman's palm was like a sharp blade that directly pierced through his abdomen. You! If it was just a sneak attack like this, Quark believed that he could still retaliate. However, the terrible thing was that his entire body was instantly paralyzed. He could not even feel the pain from such a terrifying injury. My bodily fluids can instantly paralyze a high-grade demon. The old woman chuckled softly. Seems like my luck hasn't run out yet. At least I can still find one that can replenish my energy a little, and overall, it's not bad. Who the hell are you? His body's senses were completely gone. Quark slumped powerlessly on the ground. He looked at the old woman before him in horror, feeling as if he had suddenly fallen from the clouds into the abyss. Who am I? The old woman sneered. Am I not? I'm here to retrieve this orb that originally belonged to me. Tell me, who am I? Your orb. The orb slowly flew into the old woman's hand. Then, the old woman swallowed the orb into her stomach. Then, a miraculous scene instantly happened before Quark's eyes. The ugly old woman's body actually became younger bit by bit. You're Empress Hilda. Don't be surprised. I've been pouring a large amount of power into this orb all this time. Empress Hilda squinted her eyes and smiled. I have too much power, so much so that I have to store all the power that has been overflowing into this orb. It's not much use at first, but it's suitable for certain special occasions. Her shriveled body became plump, and her skin even revealed a luster like that of precious jade. Congratulations, Empress Hilda said with a smile. Queen Hilda smiled and said, That's right. Now it's time to give you your reward. Also, your heart of sanctum, which is about to take shape and full of bloodlust, suits my mood very well. Deep inside Quark's mind, it was as if thunder was rumbling. His mind was completely blank. It's about to take shape. It's about to take shape. The Luz Sanctum's heart. I have the Luz Sanctum's heart, too. I have it too. Quark muttered to himself, but in the end, he laughed bitterly. Ha 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 ha. I have it too. The Luz Sanctum's heart. But in the end, it'll only become someone else's wedding dress. Did you see that? Did you see that? Teacher. I'm the one who's better than them. Teacher? Who's your teacher? Empress Hilda asked curiously. Don't you ever think of taking away what belongs to me? Quark suddenly shut his eyes. Empress Hilda's face darkened. She snorted coldly and grabbed Quark's head. Her 5 fingers pierced into his skull. Quark let out a loud roar. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices, and a large amount of sharp sword glares were released from his body. You want to self-destruct your soul? Still too early. Empress Hilda snorted coldly again. Then, she exerted force with her 5 fingers and crushed Quark's head. After that, she reached out her hand and grabbed at Quark's chest, pulling out a silver-black ball of light from his chest. Empress Hilda sized up the silver-black ball of light and was pleasantly surprised. I didn't expect it to be the highest grade, Sanctum's heart. This guy actually has such talent. It's a pity to kill him. Suddenly, a gigantic beam of light shot up to the sky from the depths of the palace. The light instantly illuminated the dark imperial city. The light even pierced into the dim room. Empress Hilda's expression froze. She looked out of the window, her face filled with shock and anger. The Guardian's light. Yamos, you dare sacrifice Caro. Chapter 1879. A moment ago, there were still 3 heads poking out from the high wall, looking, pondering, and then climbing in. Everything was going well, so far, everything was going well. Very well, because of the turmoil, the guards here have also left. After striding into the Hall of Guardians, the trio felt a little more relaxed. It was as if they had finally reached the end after crossing thousands of mountains and rivers. They were filled with emotions. It's still the same as before, nothing has changed, but the palace has expanded a lot. Perhaps it was because they had really reached the end, the topic became quite emotional, and even had a sense of pointing out the world. Dr. Gores seemed to like such a role, saying casually, "After all, King Amos has conquered all the countries." The maid didn't seem to like to discuss these topics at this time. "Who do you think will come here first? Is it our captain, or is it Vale?" Dr. Gores said, "It doesn't matter who comes first. We are the first to arrive, but we can't summon the kingdom's guardian." "Do you really intend to return to Wally's side?" Sneeve asked coldly. Dr. Gores gave him a meaningful look and said slowly, "I just don't want to stay in this world. Obviously, I have some nostalgia for the world we originally lived in." Mr. Sneeve didn't speak anymore, until they had completely walked into the depths of the Hall of Guardians. He still didn't speak. The group of three finally walked into a ring-shaped hall. The huge pillars were also distributed in a circle, and each pillar was inlaid with glowing pearls, which illuminated the place. There was a huge circular pattern on the ground, which looked like some kind of ritual circle, and then, in the center of the circle, a huge irregular gray stone could be seen. Without any support, it floated unreasonably above the circle formation. Guardian's Stone. Dr. Gores walked directly to the center of the circle and looked up at the gray stone floating above. "Finally, I see it again. Let's wait here. It's unrealistic to hide. I'm afraid we don't have the ability to do so." With that said, Dr. Gores sat directly on the ground. At this moment, Snake suddenly frowned, his gaze fixed in front of him. He heard the sound of footsteps, they were getting closer. So fast. Dr. Gores muttered at this time, and his eyes had a trace of nervousness, looking in the direction of the footsteps. Time seemed to be passing by slowly. But it would eventually come. A familiar face gradually entered the sights of the trio in the castle. They saw it clearly. Dr. Gores quietly. When he saw that it was the boss Luo who was the temporary leader of the servant team, Dr. Gores, he was relieved. He didn't know why. Maybe it was just a subconscious reaction. Obviously, it was more difficult to deal with the mysterious Mr. Luo than Mr. Varley. He had to admit that he was more willing to deal with the mysterious Mr. Luo than Mr. Varley. King Amos. But the servant girl's voice sounded at this time, with a hint of surprise. Coupled with her slightly open lips, she looked cute. Only then did they notice that it was not only the servant of Mr. Butler, but also the King of Yamos who came with Mr. Luo. Now, one of the only two who could awaken the Kingdom Guardian was King Amos, and the other was Princess Carol. In order to awaken the kingdom's protector, the only way was to sacrifice one of the bloodlines of the two kingdoms. As expected, it was too difficult for Princess Carol, who was protected by the Dragon Empress. On the other hand, it was easier for King Yamos, who was merely the Dragon Empress' male companion. After all, King Amos was no longer young. For Queen Hilda, perhaps he had become old, and so on. Suddenly, "Are these three also your companions?" In the silence, King Amos looked at the three people who arrived first and asked curiously, "They give me the feeling that they are not a threat. I'm even thinking that if these extraterrestrial visitors were like this every time they came to our world, I might not have made such a request." Boss Luo just smiled casually and said, "I'm really sorry for making your majesty feel threatened. Before entering this world, I didn't intend to destroy it." King Amos said indifferently, "I believe what you said. You have a special magic that can make people believe you." Boss Luo just smiled and didn't say anything. "But this is not necessarily a good thing," King Amos said again. "This shows that you can easily hurt those who naturally trust you. After all, they trust you so much. and I'm afraid this will only happen more and more often. This king is a little Nan Shaunen couldn't help but look at King Amos a few more times. In her opinion, King Amos' life was full of legends. From a prince who had nothing, he turned the tables in a desperate situation. He fought his way through and finally succeeded in winning from the many heirs. He ascended the throne, and in the following 20 years, he almost ruled the entire world. It was said that King Amos was lucky because he was favored by the Dragon Queen, and because he had the support of the Dragon Clan, the strongest clan on the continent. He ascended the throne of the human race. Countless legends described King Amos' life as a lucky king. Not only did he have the strongest wife in the world, but he also had a beautiful daughter. It was the ultimate dream of all men. "You are very lonely," King Amos finally said softly. Boss Luo was a little moved, but he still didn't say anything. At this time, King Amos said, "Wait here. The ceremony will take some time to start. If everything goes well, you should be able to leave before dawn." As he spoke, the King of Elnis walked straight into the circle formation. The trio who were originally in the circle made way for him. At this time, Dr. Jules discovered that the eyes of the legendary Yamos king actually had a kind of majesty that made people tremble in fear. This was definitely not the gaze of a man who relied on women to get rich. He couldn't look into King Amos' eyes, so he could only avoid it. Tina couldn't do it, and neither could Sneeve. They could only retreat silently, and finally retreated to Boss Luo's side. The invisible pressure even made the trio sweat on their foreheads at this time. "You, Mr. Luo, how did you get King Amos to come in person?" Finally, in order to resist the pressure from the king, Miss Maid took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. In her opinion, this was really unbelievable. King Amos was willing to carry out the blood sacrifice himself. He wanted to come. No matter what, Boss Luo still answered this question. He wanted to come? Dr. Gores couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at King Amos, who was sitting cross-legged in the center of the circle of the summoning ritual. At this moment, the Yamos king directly cut both of his wrists. He then lowered his hands and let the blood drip into the runes of the round formation. Dr. Gores had seen the summoning ritual of the Guardian. It was indeed a blood sacrifice. When the blood of the royal bloodline was drained, the Guardian of the kingdom would be awakened. But this process of draining the blood was extremely painful. Therefore, in the past summoning rituals, the former kings directly drugged the descendants who were chosen for the blood sacrifice, and then carried out the ritual. Of course, because of the initiation of the ritual, the former kings would stand aside during the whole process, coldly looking at the descendants who were sacrificed for the blood sacrifice gradually die. The circle stained with the king's blood began to emit a faint blood-red light, and it gradually became stronger. Everything was carried out just like the awakening ritual in Dr. Gore's memory. This was what he found inconceivable. What kind of reason did the king have to come down personally? Dr. Gores even smelled a strange smell, but before he could think about it carefully, an uncomfortable feeling began to spread in the Guardian's palace. Something is approaching. Nan Shaunen wrinkled her brows at this time, and immediately became alert. In the dimly lit hall, many gazes appeared. Under the dim light they gradually appeared. They let out low growls like wild beasts. They didn't seem like humans, but they were indeed humans. The people in the king's city who became bloodthirsty and ferocious because of mutation. "How come these guys?" Dr. Gores was shocked and blurted out, "It's Wally, he's here. He's finally here." Dr. Gores's exclamation instantly touched the nerves of the mutated and bloodthirsty human army, but the dense crowd of mutated and bloodthirsty humans instantly became violent. They stretched out their hands and roared as they swarmed forward. Resistance was an instinct. No matter what plan they had, the only choice in front of the three people in the castle was to fight back. The three people in the castle took out their weapons and activated their skills, heavily knocking down the mutated humans who were charging at them, but there were too many mutated humans, and there were even professionals who participated in the Kingdom tournament among them. There were strong and weak professionals, but when they worked together, they were a terrifying force. The key was this situation where they couldn't kill all of them. Nan Xiaonan didn't say anything and waved the demonic diagram. Instantly, 4 tall, humanoid king-rank monsters stood beside her and Boss Luo, like 4 terrifying guards. "You guys retreat to my side," Boss Luo suddenly said. Nan Xiaonan didn't say anything and directly hid behind Boss Luo. Dr. Gores and the other 2 people heard the sound and quickly shrank the battle circle. Seeing that it was about time, Boss Luo raised his hands as if he was holding something. A glowing stream of water began to appear in his palms and then flowed to the ground. Dr. Gores had seen Boss Luo use this skill before, in the elven home. At this moment, the water slowly flowed. After a while, a small pool of water formed under everyone's feet. The mutated humans seemed to have met their natural enemy. They squeezed in front of the pool of water but didn't dare to move forward. However, more and more mutated humans rushed in from behind. Finally, under the pushing and shoving, the mutated humans in the front row were pushed into the pool of water. Suddenly, the mutated humans who came into contact with the pool of water let out shrill cries. Traces of black gas surged out from their bodies. As if they were burned by flames, they rolled and screamed in the pool of water. Finally, they lost all their senses and became motionless. "It's effective." Dr. Gores was pleasantly surprised. At this moment, the mutated humans suddenly became quiet. They even separated in the middle and made a path. "I've long heard that you obtain the ability to have 2 professions. Although I already knew this, it's still more shocking to see it with my own eyes." In the path that the mutated humans made, a figure came in with his hands behind his back. The iconic mustache and charming smile. This was the image of the owner of the ancient castle, Mr. Varley, that Boss Luo saw in the ancient castle. When Mr. Varley appeared in this image that had ruled the ancient castle for many years, the eyes of the 3 people in the ancient castle changed slightly. Mr. Sneeve clenched the sharp blade in his hand. His hands kept shaking and his eyes were red, but his feet seemed to be tied to a mountain and couldn't move. Mr. Varley didn't care about the 3 people in the ancient castle at this time. Instead, he looked at Boss Luo and smiled. "Did you enjoy the game, Mr. Lost Guest? I saw a lot of exotic scenery along the way." Boss Luo nodded and said, "It was indeed a good trip. It's the greatest pleasure to satisfy the guest as a host." Mr. Varley covered his chest and bowed. "It's really an honor. I also thank Mr. Varley for his hospitality." Boss Luo responded with a smile. Mr. Varley straightened up at this time and said casually, "In this case, I think it's almost time to end this game." With that said, Mr. Varley waved his hand. A bone-long sword quietly appeared in his hand. He casually inserted the bone-long sword directly into the floor. Almost at the same time, a black ripple emerged from the floor. It spread like a ripple. When the ripple reached the holy light pool, the holy light pool evaporated crazily. In just a moment, the holy light pool that could be used to purify mutated humans had completely dried up and disappeared. You know, in this world, there is no absolute invincible power and weapon. Mr. Varley smiled slightly. Any weapon will have an existence that can restrain it. For example, this snake devourer of all spells is specially designed to fight against Aster of Aurora. So, Boss Luo silently took out total annihilation. Then what about it? What is it designed for? F***CK. Mr. Varley's words. Chapter 1880. F***CK. Don't panic when something happens. Take out your phone and send. Oh, there's no such thing here. Looking at the last divine weapon in Boss Luo's hand, total annihilation, Mr. Varley was surprisingly calm. He couldn't not be calm. He had no emotions and couldn't express them. This was a situation he had never encountered before. The appearance of total annihilation was like asking him, "Are you surprised?" Are you surprised? Life is indeed full of surprises, scares? Where did you get it? At this time, Mr. Varley suddenly pulled out the Devourer of Spells. That was stabbed into the ground. He even used a completely curious tone. I've been collecting information about its appearance many times, but I've never been able to find out its specific location. I only know that it later fell into the hands of the royal family of Elness. So, how did you get it? Total annihilation. The last divine weapon, like the other two, had a strong anti-dragon attribute. They became famous during the battle between the first king of Elness, King Griffith, and the Dragon King of the continent's dragon race, Light Dragon King. In the past, King Griffith wielded the Aurora's Aster, and formed a dragon-slaying team with two other weapon users. With the dragon-slaying properties of the three weapons, they successfully slayed the Light Dragon King. Because of this, the three weapons had a legend and became the legendary three godly weapons. Each of them had a different function. For example, the Devourer of Spells was known to be able to dissolve all attacks and could completely imprison the power of the target who used it for the first time. As for Total Annihilation, it could shoot the soul. The user who really used Total Annihilation could use the ultimate skill of Total Annihilation and release the soul arrow. Even if it was thousands of miles away, it could still shoot the soul of the target. I borrowed it from a gentleman. Boss Luo raised Total Annihilation at this time and directly stretched out his hand to pull the bowstring, but I promised to return it after leaving. As he said, Boss Luo directly released his fingers. The bowstring that was pulled back by a finger's distance instantly tightened. Only a clanging sound could be heard. Almost at the same time, at the moment when the bowstring sounded, Mr. Varley squatted down fiercely. His face was full of fear. But after he squatted down, he found that Boss Luo just pulled the bowstring casually and didn't shoot anything. Are you toying with me? Mr. Varley's pupils contracted slightly, and his hand that was holding the snake devourer of all spells trembled slightly. I didn't put an arrow on the bowstring, Boss Luo said casually. Why would I deliberately tease Mr. Wally? You clearly have it. Mr. Varley gritted his teeth and cursed inside. He dared to do that in front of Gores, Sneeve and other servants who worked in his castle. That's right, he was clearly toying with him. Dr. Gores also thought so at this time, and shouted loudly in his heart, I know. He did it on purpose. I've experienced it. I understand. The doctor, who was filled with inexplicable grief and indignation, almost wanted to make a sound. You're bluffing. Mr. Varley suddenly snorted coldly. He sneered and said, I was almost fooled by you. Although I don't know where you got Total Annihilation, you can't have a class that can cooperate with Total Annihilation. Mr. Varley's thought came, and his confidence grew. You already have two classes, and it's the ultimate class of the Holy Light. This is already the limit of a servant. You can't have a third class. This is what I confirmed after spending countless time and effort to explore this chessboard world. So, even if you got Total Annihilation, you just got a good-looking and harder wood. You can't use it at all. That's right. That's right. Yes, that's it. My idea is correct. I really don't have a third class. Boss Luo lowered Total Annihilation at this time, and then said with a serious face, So, I really didn't mean to tease you. I just pulled the bowstring out of curiosity. Mr. Varley almost spat out the blood of the last century. I didn't see it? This guy looked like a gentleman on the outside. How could he be so mischievous all of a sudden, and so fatally so? He really minded that instinctive squatting just now. It was simply a trampling on his perfect image. Enough. Mr. Varley slowly exhaled at this time, and said expressionlessly, You are not a tourist who came to my castle because the car broke down. Probably, my sister sent you here. Boss Luo couldn't help but be stunned. He was really stunned. How could Varley think so? However, Dr. Gores frowned at this time and quietly glanced at Boss Luo. His eyes were a bit strange. "You don't have to quibble." Mr. Varley sneered and said, "Yes, outside the chessboard. My sisters seem to be fighting with your female companion, but it was just an act for me to see, right? I know very well what Gong Lina is thinking. Over the years, she would send people here every now and then. There were demon hunters, inhumans, and even more ordinary people. There was even a lucky young master from the Bohemian family who was created by someone. She used these people to test my control over the chessboard again and again. In fact, all of this is very reasonable." Mr. Varley chuckled and opened his hands. "Why have you been so successful since you entered the chessboard? Not only can you become stronger quickly, but you can also perfectly restrain my servants. Don't you think I can see that it's my sister's hands that are pushing you behind the scenes? Only she knows my action pattern and my preferences so well. In the end, she successfully used the function card to directly put my real body into the chessboard." Listening to Mr. Varley's words at this time, Boss Luo was a little moved. In fact, Mr. Varley's opinion was really reasonable to some extent. Boss Luo's existence would naturally give birth to reasonable reasons for all the unreasonable things, as a reasonable explanation for his initiative to intervene in everything. "If you don't speak, I guess you agree," Mr. Varley said indifferently. "You should have been trained by Gong Lina for a long time before coming here, so you know my preferences, how to deal with me and so on." "Humph, I know what Gong Lina is thinking, but it is clear that she was too hasty this time. I am afraid that my sudden invitation made her have no choice but to launch her plan against me in advance, or perhaps the internal strife of the clan is too disadvantageous for her, so she had no choice but to take such a dangerous step. But it doesn't matter, she will soon know the consequences of teasing me. Let's assume it's true." Boss Luo followed Varley's thoughts at this time and asked curiously, "How do you plan to fight back against Miss Gong Lina? Mr. Varley is now also her follower." "You don't need to know what I will do," Mr. Varley said indifferently. "You only need to understand one thing. You have been smooth and powerful all this time, but it's just artificially created. I'm afraid this is the most comprehensive strategy that Gong Lina has exchanged for the consumption of the chess pieces sent into the chessboard to fight with me for so many years, right? The truth is indeed like this. You have indeed caused me to fall into a trap many times. Even my servants seem to have seen hope that shouldn't exist. Thus, they unknowingly lean towards you and Gong Lina, who is standing behind you." Mr. Varley's eyes instantly looked at Dr. Gores and the other two. Dr. Gores couldn't help but look pale. Ms. Maid's body trembled slightly. Only Sneeve looked at him without fear at this time. His eyes were full of resentment and hatred. Mr. Varley sneered and waved his hand lightly. "But it doesn't matter. I can get as many servants as I want from the inhuman territory. I don't care." "So, you seem to be sure that you have one?" Nan Xiaonan suddenly sneered at this time. "According to the current situation, you don't seem to have any advantage, right, Mr. Varley?" "Damn it!" Mr. Varley shouted at this time. "Don't think that I don't dare to kill you because you are Lisa's follower. I have many ways to let Lisa avoid the chessboard. Punishment. You'd better hide aside obediently. When I win, go back to the original world with me." Nan Xiaonan was scolded, but she didn't get angry because of it. Instead, she felt incredible. This guy. It seemed that he really cared about his butler. Which castle butler had a bad memory? But then again, Nan Xiaonan suddenly discovered one thing. That was, she seemed to be in the position of winning since she was in the same group with butler Lisa. She could win if she followed Mr. Luo. If Mr. Varley won unexpectedly in the end, because of Mr. Butler, she actually could still win? Oh, Nan Xiaonan turned out to be the real goddess, the queen of the grand finale? You are lucky. Boss Luo looked at her at this time and smiled casually. Nan Xiaonan shrugged and said, "How is this luck?" This is clearly bad luck. Mr. Luo, do you think I am the kind of person who swings from side to side? Boss Luo looked at her meaningfully. Nan Xiaonan suddenly felt wronged. She said pitifully, Do I really have to dig out my heart to prove it to you? Not only was she pitiful, but her voice was even a little tired. Sure enough. Mr. Varley shook his head at this time. Human beings are so superstitious at any time. As a vested interest, do you really think that with Gong Lina's so-called strategy, you can defeat the real owner of the chessboard that has been operating for countless years in this chessboard world? While sneering, Mr. Varley opened his palm. A stone fragment engraved with ancient oracle bone inscriptions slowly floated out of his palm. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but widen her eyes, looking at the appearance of this stone fragment in surprise. At this moment, Mr. Varley directly raised the stone fragment in his hand. In an instant, a huge brilliance was released from this fragment, instantly illuminating the entire inside of the Guardian's Hall. At this moment, under the illumination of the stone fragment, those mutated humans suddenly became abnormally restless and uneasy. Suddenly, the mutated humans crazily squeezed everything. They squeezed to Mr. Varley's side, completely drowning him. They hugged each other tightly, stepped on each other's body, climbed up and hugged each other again. They continued to climb up. At this time, they piled up into a human-shaped mountain. However, they didn't stop and even directly broke through the dome of the Guardian's Hall. Rumble! The dome collapsed and boulders fell. The entire palace was shaking at this time. However, the mutated humans from all directions still didn't stop at this time. They continued to crazily squeeze into this huge human mountain. It became taller and bigger at the same time. It became taller, even taller than the highest spire of the palace. Countless mutated humans were like components at this time. Their hands and legs were tightly locked together. Finally, a titan, formed by a huge number of mutated humans, appeared in the depths of the king's hall. Roar! Gargantuan let out a tragic roar that gathered countless voices. The gargantuan arm, formed by thousands of mutated humans, slammed down viciously at the Temple of the Guardians. The gigantic palm instantly crushed half of the Hall of Guardians. Among the messy rocks and pillars, a couple of figures were moving swiftly and were considered safe from the collapse. But the eyes of the castle trio were horrified. They looked at this terrifying titan in horror. This was Mr. Varley's method. He had been operating in the chessboard world. At this time, Mr. Varley's body slowly floated out from the forehead of this terrifying titan. Even if there's no item to pass the game, it's enough for me to defeat the kingdom's guardian and pass the game by consuming countless lives in the king's hall. As for you, Tremble, feel the moment of being dominated by fear and despair. This will be the real power that you can't understand in this world. We're doomed. Are we really doomed? Dr. Gores stared at this invincible and terrifying titan with a blank mind. Sure enough, I made the wrong choice from the beginning? Suddenly, a crazy shout sounded. Dr. Gores looked over subconsciously and saw Sneeve crazily scratching his face with both hands. He even scratched his face until it was badly mutilated. Suddenly, Sneeve raised the sharp blade in his hand and rushed toward this terrifying titan, while roaring desperately, "Kill me! Kill me! If you don't kill me, I'll kill you! Varley! This old bastard!" Dr. Gores gritted his teeth and rushed to Sneeve's side, punching Sneeve's heart. Suddenly suffering a heavy blow, Sneeve's heart stopped beating and fell into shock. Dr. Gores didn't look carefully at this time. He directly carried Sneeve and dodged to the side. However, at this time, he saw a figure standing on the half-collapsed pillar of the hall ruins. That was Boss Luo's figure. At this time, Boss Luo held Total Annihilation in his hand and made a bow-drawing action. The bow was now facing this terrifying titan. I said, "You don't have a third profession at all." Mr. Varley laughed loudly. "What are you going to use to shoot me?" Boss Luo stretched out his hand and Aurora's aster appeared in his palm. Then, he directly placed Aurora's aster on the bowstring of total annihilation. He pulled the bowstring to half full and pointed the blade at the terrifying, titanous forehead. In an instant, Aurora's aster burst out with a brilliant light. This light even flowed into a total annihilation. Suddenly, a total annihilation released a large amount of blazing aura. There's a hint: as long as 2-3 godly weapons are combined, you can use a combination skill. Boss Luo looked at Mr. Varley and said, "Don't you know?" "I don't know. I've never held 2-3 godly weapons at the same time." "Go to hell." Chapter 1881. A huge whirlpool-like power gathered on Aurora's aster. This kind of powerful energy fluctuation made Wally feel that his life was in danger. What was shot out was Aurora's aster, not Apocalypse's ultimate skill, Battle of Souls. His soul wouldn't be killed, but his body would definitely be. Without a body, the soul would lose its carrier. Even if the soul didn't die, it would have no ability to resist. He would die anyway. This was the fact that he was defeated by Varley at this time. It's impossible. No matter how Gong Lina stole the information of chessboard, she couldn't let you get 2 godly weapons. It's impossible. This isn't real. Wally's body was fused with Giant, and he was struggling in fear and panic. It seemed like he wanted to get out of the Giant's connection. However, the hands of the mutated human clasped his body tightly. "Who is it? Who is using illusion on me? I won't be fooled. None of this is real. I'm the master of this chessboard. I've been working hard to uncover all the secrets here. Die!" The hands of the terrifying giant were clasped together, raised high, and then dropped down fiercely. At the same time, Boss Luo's fingers had also loosened slightly. The bowstring was tightened, and Aurora's aster was pushed out directly. The nebula-like whirlpool-like power tore Giant's hands apart when it came into contact with the terrifying Giant's hands. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of mutated humans were separated from Giant's hands and thrown out. However, Aurora's aster's momentum didn't slow down at all. Varley, who was on the Giant's forehead, was like an eye-catching bull's eye. He couldn't break free and could only watch Aurora's aster shooting towards him. "I won't lose. This is just an illusion." Mr. Varley suddenly laughed wildly. He even opened his hands and wanted to hug the nebula whirlpool that was shooting towards him. "You can't deceive me. You can't fool me. Ha 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 ha." When the brilliance reached a certain level, it would drown out all sight. The brilliance of the nebula vortex had reached this extreme. At this moment, the light soared into the sky. A huge hole was instantly poked in the Dragon Emperor enchantment under the night sky. Finally, the light completely dissipated in the sky. At this time, Nan Xiaonan used her arms to cover her eyes. When the light weakened, she forced herself to open her eyes. This was the terrifying giant that was formed by the mutated citizens of the capital. At this moment, the entire head and the upper part of the body had been destroyed. Under this chain reaction, the terrifying giant began to collapse, and a large number of mutated humans began to peel off and fall to the ground. It was terrifying because it possessed a terrifying number of lives. It could very easily destroy this royal city. However, it was unable to do so. It had not even truly displayed its full strength, but it had already been defeated. Nan Xiaonan could not help but think of Xian. It was a joke. Once upon a time, there was a magician who hid in the mountains and practiced hard for 100 years. Finally, he created the most powerful magic in his life. The magician came out of the mountains. When he wanted to use this magic to establish his greatness, he encountered a bandit who blocked his way. Then, the magician was beaten to death by the bandit's chaotic fist. Because his great magic took too long to cast, the magician's fragile body could not withstand the bandit's fists at all. In the end, the bandit who succeeded in robbing the magician did not forget to despise the magician for having nothing valuable on him and spat 2 mouthfuls of thick phlegm. Nan Xiaonan did not laugh out loud because at this time, Mr. Luo's eyes suddenly looked at her. Nan Xiaonan, who felt that her thoughts had been read, suddenly changed her expression slightly and said embarrassedly, "That bandit was me." Lady Nan, demonic diagram. Boss Luo said indifferently at this time, "If all the monsters are released, they should be able to catch these falling residents of the king's city." Nan Xiaonan was suddenly stunned. She suddenly trembled, and at this time, she hurriedly opened the demonic diagram, toward the sky. Every monster sealed in this demonic diagram was a high-level monster. Perhaps one of them could not deal with the Holy Realm professionals in the chessboard world, but if all of them were released, it was really a terrible combat power. Especially when they were not fighting, they were more useful. Rays of light shot out from the heavenly demon diagram, and dozens of high-level monsters stretched their bodies in the air. They came in various shapes and sizes, with the smallest being the size of a mouse, and the largest having a body as large as a palace. The work of saving the falling people was unusually easy for Nan Xiaonan. Boss Luo jumped down from the high place he was standing at this time, but he walked in a certain direction, and this direction was the last place where Wally fell. However, Wally wasn't the only one who fell. Another figure fell with Wally. It belonged to the head maid of the palace, Laura. In the big pit on the ground, Mr. Wally was sitting with a dazed look in his eyes. At this time, there was an extremely weak figure in his arms. At the moment when Aurora's aster was about to penetrate Wally's body, at the moment when the huge light engulfed everything, a figure rushed out from the ground and directly blocked in front of Wally. "You? Can you still take me away? Leave this world." At the verge of death, she stretched out her hand and wanted to touch Wally's dazed face. But she could only raise half of her hand and began to fall. "It seems it's impossible, right?" Looking at the face that slowly closed eyes and showed a mocking smile, Wally subconsciously opened his mouth. His body began to shrink a little. He was no longer mature and steady. He became smaller and turned back into the young Wally, just like the young Wally when he was dragged into the chessboard world by the punishment roulette. Suddenly, young Wally directly pushed Laura away from his arms. You woman, you woman." Young Wally suddenly raised his arm, 5 fingers together, and directly slapped Laura's face under his red eyes. "You damn, it's all your fault. If you can get the key for me. You're such a troublemaker. You trash." Wally raised his arm and slapped her again and again. His palm slapped her face, then his fist. At this time, Laura seemed to have completely become a tool to vent. She was motionless. Suddenly, young Wally's arm stopped. He slowly pulled back his arm and looked at the thing that he accidentally grabbed from Laura's body. A necklace. Key. Young Wally looked at the necklace that was stained with blood at this time. He lowered his head and looked at the beautiful face that was slightly distorted by his slaps. You stupid and troublemaker." He began to laugh wildly. "I haven't lost. How can I lose? In the end, I can still win." In an instant, young Wally stretched out his hand and grabbed 6 or 7 small shining bottles in his palm. He directly raised them to his mouth and then crushed them all. The liquid in the various bottles was mixed and quickly poured into young Wally's mouth. Lowering his head, young Wally stretched out his hand and wiped the residual liquid on his lip. His eyes were cold and sharp as he looked at the figure that was sliding down from the big pit and slowly walking towards him, Luochio. An old opponent. This opponent had more luck than him, the owner of chessboard. "This game is not over yet." Young Wally sneered at this time and directly raised the devourer of 10,000 spells in his hand. When approaching young Wally, Boss Luo looked at the beaten-up Laura on the ground. What made Boss Luo look at her was that even so, there was still a trace of faint smile on her face. She was still smiling, which seemed to be peaceful and happy, but also like some kind of ridicule. But at this time, she was quiet, completely quiet, only the occasional rise and fall of her chest, which meant that she was still in this world. At this moment, a black light flew over. It didn't give Boss Luo any time to take a closer look. Young Wally, who was wielding the devourer of 10,000 spells, swelled a lot at this time. He should have poured a lot of recovery potions and even potions to increase his strength. These were all his reserve. It's better to leave when it's time to leave. At this time, Boss Luo raised his eyes, and at this time, a long sword that was 60% to 70% similar to Aurora's aster appeared in his hand. Facing young Wally's attack, Boss Luo easily blocked it with this gorgeous sword in his hand. Sometimes, having the opportunity to give a curtain call to the audience will reduce a lot of regrets. For example, Miss Laura, if she fainted a little later, I'm afraid that she wouldn't have this smile on her face now. The gorgeous sword directly twisted the devourer of 10,000 spells. This legendary 3 godly weapons was directly sent flying from young Wally's hand. The godly weapon was slanted into the ground. At the moment when the godly weapon left his hand, young Wally's eyes were filled with horror. He panicked and stepped back, looking at the gorgeous sword in Boss Luo's hand inconceivably. What kind of weapon is this? In this world, there shouldn't be such a powerful weapon except for the 3 godly weapons. This is not a godly weapon, Boss Luo said indifferently. I bought this from the weapons stall under the bridge as a temporary replacement. Well, it cost a lot of money. Money. I have endless wealth in this world. At this time, you still want to tease me. Young Wally's eyes were red again. Bully me? You bully me. Gong Lina also bully me. All of you bully me. Enough. I've had enough. All of you go to hell. This is the real you? Boss Luo tilted his head and looked at the furious young Wally with surprise. Young Wally sneered and then suddenly raised the blood-stained necklace in his hand high. At the same time, he took out another stone fragment from his arms. This was the fragment he used to create the terrifying Titan. Do you know what this is? Young Wally laughed. This is the key to open the endless treasure of this world. It's the key to control the rules of this world. Gong Lina didn't tell you, right? This was the thing that she had been longing to obtain all this time. I'm going to summon the last guardian. All of you will die in this place. Ah! A beam of light flashed by at lightning speed. Suddenly, there was a shrill scream. Young Wally's eyes almost popped out of his eye sockets. He even burst into tears. His whole face was completely distorted. My hand! My hand! My hand! His hands, which were holding the 2 fragments, had been chopped off by something. His 2 palms fell to the ground at this moment. The 2 fragments that were tightly grasped in his palms suddenly flew out and fell into someone's hand in an instant. She was Gong Sun Ernyang. My hand! My hand! How dare you cut off my hands? Young Wally, whose hands were cut off and the 2 fragments were taken away, the green roots on his forehead bulged inch by inch. He recklessly dashed towards Gong Sun Ernyang. What an uneducated wild child! Gong Sun Ernyang snorted. She waved her hand and a gust of wind swept out. Young Wally was blown away and landed a dozen meters away. Wild children shouldn't take things that shouldn't be taken. My hand. My key. My hand. My key. Young Wally was lying on the ground motionlessly, his eyes unfocused. My hand. My hand. Bully me. 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 Gong Sun Ernyang waved her hand again, sweeping young Wally further away. She didn't turn to Boss Luo until she couldn't hear young Wally's voice anymore. What do you think? Gong Sun Ernyang spread out the 2 fragments and said indifferently, These are the fragments of the control core of the chessboard. Each fragment has a different function. Some of them have similar functions, while some have different functions. One of the pieces here can be used to open the Guardian Gate and summon the Guardian. Senior, just say what you want to say. Boss Luo said calmly. Gongsun Ernyang said, I've given you enough time to consider. Now, the key to summon the guardian is with me. If you don't have this key, even if you successfully sacrifice King Amos or that useless princess, the guardian won't be able to come out. My request is very simple. If you promise to do one thing for me after I leave, I'll give you the key. Boss Luo laughed involuntarily. Senior, this is coercion. If you have the ability, you can do it too. Gongsun Ernyang said straightforwardly, I'm an unreasonable old woman. You have to agree even if you don't want to. Otherwise, you'll stay in this chessboard world. Anyway, my silly son seems to like making friends with you. It's not bad for you to stay with him. Mose is a very interesting person, Boss Luo suddenly said. There's an interesting soul hidden in his body. Gongsun Ernyang didn't know why he said this. She couldn't help but frown, but at this moment, a loud roar resounded throughout the entire King City. Yamos! How dare you touch my daughter? It was Empress Hilda's voice. Hashtag PS1. Thank you to the new owner, Eastern Observer. Applause and gun salute for the birth of Mo. PS2. Clap. Gun salute. PS3. 0/1. Chapter 1882. Queen Hilda appeared again, and her angry roar startled Gongsun Ernyang, who was negotiating with Boss Luo. It was a very annoying thing to be interrupted while you were in the middle of something. Obviously, Mose's mother, Gongsun Ernyang, wasn't someone who was willing to be polite to anyone. Gongsun Ernyang let out a cold snort as she watched a figure fall into the depths of the palace like a meteor. It's you again, bitch. It seems that the previous lesson wasn't enough. Gongsun Ernyang narrowed her eyes and put her two fingers together. A golden light turned into a sword and slowly spread out. Puppet with only brute force. Gongsun Ernyang waved her hand, and the golden sword light shot out from her fingertips. The sword light that shot out was far less powerful than Aurora's aster when it was shot out in the form of an arrow, but no one could underestimate its power. It's you again, you old witch! Queen Hilda's exasperated voice came from the sky, and then her meteor-like figure was blocked. Gongsun Ernyang's sword light suddenly disappeared in the night sky. Huh! A look of surprise appeared on Gongsun Ernyang's face. She frowned and looked at Queen Hilda, who had stopped under the night sky. Empress Hilda had actually managed to block Gongsun Ernyang's attack, and on her body, there was a set of armor that was glowing with rainbow light. That's sacred armor! An exclamation sounded from the ruins of the Hall of Guardians, in the depths of the palace. It was the voice of Dr. Gores. It was indeed the sacred armor. Although the team leader Mr. Luo didn't show this ultimate armor on the way, but it was so eye-catching that Dr. Gores wouldn't forget it even if he only showed it once. At this moment, Dr. Gores was shocked that the sacred armor was on Queen Hilda's body. He unconsciously loosened his arm, and Sneeve, who was being carried by him, fell to the ground. Dr. Gores was shocked and quickly carried Sneeve again, and then found a way to hide. He hid behind a huge collapsed pillar. Unexpectedly, behind this huge pillar was the ritual array used to awaken the Kingdom Guardian. Dr. Gores couldn't help but open his mouth. Because, since Wally appeared and the terrifying giant was born, almost 70% of the Hall of Guardians had collapsed. However, in this ritual array, King Amos was still sitting quietly. He didn't even move an inch, and just sat quietly in the center of the ritual array, continuing the blood sacrifice ritual. Dr. Gores could even see King Amos's pale face at this time, and the pattern of the ritual array became clearer after absorbing the blood of the royal family. This King Amos, is he unable to leave this ritual array, or did he not notice what happened outside? Can't notice? It's obviously impossible. But he's still here continuing the ritual? Dr. Gores couldn't understand. At this moment. From the looks of it, this formation pattern should be completed soon, someone suddenly said from the side. Yes. Dr. Girth nodded subconsciously. Judging from the situation, it won't take more than 5 minutes. You. It's you. Why are you here? Dr. Gores suddenly jumped up, shocked and angry, and nervously stared at the person who suddenly talked to him. Peace between man and nature. At this moment, Peace between man and nature was squatting on the ground, with a faint smile on her face, looking at him, which made Dr. Gore's hair stand on end. Shoo! Peace between man and nature quickly made a shushing gesture, and then pointed to the sky. The sky was naturally referring to Queen Hilda, who had made a comeback and was extremely angry. Dr. Gores broke out in cold sweat at this time, and felt that it was not good either way, so he simply squatted down again without saying a word. It was better to live a peaceful life than to die. Hey, what do you think if I go over and kill King Amos now? At this time, Peace between man and nature suddenly whispered to Dr. Gores, "Will you never be able to summon this so-called guardian?" Dr. Gores suddenly gasped. He suddenly realized a very serious problem that he had neglected for a long time. That was the problem of summoning the guardian. In the past, the kings of Elna's kingdom were like breeding pigs. There were at least a dozen descendants in each generation, and at most there were close to 3-digit. Therefore, the former kings would not feel too sad about the blood sacrifice of a royal bloodline. There were even princes or princesses who were specially bred for this purpose, and were used as blood sacrifices from the beginning. But this time was different. This time, only the King of Yamos and Princess Carol were left. Moreover, Princess Carol, a descendant of the royal family with the dragon bloodline mixed in, could become a blood sacrifice. Dr. Girls was not sure whether or not Princess Carol could become a blood sacrifice. In other words, if King Amos and Princess Carol died, the summoning ritual of the kingdom's guardian could never be carried out? What do you want to do? Dr. Gores could not help but look at Peace between man and nature in shock. Nothing. Peace between man and nature smiled casually, then looked up at the sky again. Dr. Gores quietly swallowed his saliva, feeling uneasy. By the way, how long did you say 5 minutes was? Peace between man and nature suddenly asked. What I mean is, how long is 5 minutes in our world? F***ck. Could it be that this guy wanted to take advantage of the last moment of the ceremony to attack the Yamos king? Very long. At least 10 or 20 centimeters. It seems that it will be soon. Peace between man and nature chuckled, then pulled out her sword, and even took a handkerchief to gently wipe the blade. Dr. Gores subconsciously moved away a little, but he thought that in front of peace between man and nature's strength, even with all the power he had obtained as a servant, it seemed that he could not escape from her sword. He couldn't help but stop. He thought to himself in a self-deprecating manner, no matter if it's me, Wally, or even the servants who entered the chessboard world before, they have always regarded this world as a place where they can make money as they wish. There are benefits everywhere, and the creatures in the chessboard world are tools that can be discarded at will. Perhaps they will also be devoured by the people in the chessboard world one day. Have we been underestimating this world all this time? At this moment, a figure quickly flashed in front of him. Dr. Gores's eyes were sharp, and he immediately recognized that it was Tina. Dr. Gores was overjoyed, thinking that if Tina suddenly attacked peace between man and nature from behind, they might have a chance to defeat peace between man and nature. But the surprise in Dr. Gores's heart quickly turned into disappointment and anger, because he clearly saw Tina flash in the back, and then directly turned in another direction. Moreover, Dr. Gores clearly noticed that Tina had noticed his existence at this time. Where is she going? Your expression is quite rich. Peace between man and nature suddenly said. Dr. Gores said embarrassedly, because I used a knife. Peace between man and nature couldn't help but be speechless. Who would be so bored to use a knife on his face? Are all the people in the outside world like this? A huge flying monster slowly landed, and then it shook its body. In an instant, hundreds of unconscious King's City residents fell from the monster's back. Nan Xiaonan naturally wasn't in the mood to count the total number of rescues. Her head was a little swollen. Controlling so many high-level monsters at one time was obviously a very taxing thing. The key was that her spiritual power was limited by the servant's body. No. I have to take a break, this work is not for humans. When Nan Xiaonan was about to sit down, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind her. What are you doing here? Nan Xiaonan was stunned. She suddenly turned around and saw the figure coming out from the shadow, and couldn't help but open her mouth. Tang Tianlin. The person who appeared behind her at this time was Tang Tianlin, who she hadn't heard from for a long time. Why are you? I have something to ask you. This was the reason why Boss Luo didn't show this set of armor. It was too eye-catching. But apparently, Queen Hilda didn't care about the eye-catching light of the sacred armor. At this time, the Dragon Queen frowned, and the opposite was Gongsun Ernyang's cold eyes. Hilda had suffered a loss at the hands of Gongsun Ernyang, and it was a great loss, and not too long ago. Before this, Hilda had never thought that there would be someone in the world who could make her feel such fear. She felt as if there was a thorn in her back and a dagger in her throat. Do you think I can't do anything to you just because you have a tortoise shell? Gongsun Ernyang snorted at this time. Xianyuan Palace has many martial arts that can break heavy armor. Queen Hilda didn't understand the latter half of the sentence, but she basically guessed the meaning. However, she didn't want to lower her head, so she said in a low voice, I don't have time to deal with you now. I'm here for my daughter. Don't think that I'll be afraid of you after you defeated me last time. If you push me too far, I'm afraid it'll be too late for regrets. Gongsun Ernyang sneered and said, What? Do you really think that the so-called gods and Titan race, who ended the golden era of the dragon race, will protect your race forever? You? How do you know? Queen Hilda's face changed color. Who are you? You don't need to know how I know. Gongsun Ernyang said indifferently. All you need to know is that even if I don't do it, someone will do it sooner or later to deal with you big bugs who call themselves the Dragon Clan. You can't escape the cycle of reincarnation. The destruction of the Titan clan is a reflection of your future. Queen Hilda's face changed color again. She gritted her teeth, left Gongsun Ernyang and rushed into the depths of the broken Palace of Guardians. Where are you going? But Gongsun Ernyang refused to let her go. Keeping you around is also troublesome. Since someone will come to deal with you sooner or later, I might as well accept this task now, so that I don't have to worry about my eyes in the future. Dragon binding hands. Boss Luo saw a golden dragon-like stream of air rushing out from Gongsun Ernyang's palm and wrapped around Queen Hilda. The golden dragon-like stream of air instantly turned into a hard rope, and Queen Hilda was directly pulled back by Gongsun Ernyang. You injured my child last time. Do you think that by taking my sword, you can forget about it? When Queen Hilda was pulled back, Gongsun Ernyang didn't say anything and directly pressed her palm on Queen Hilda's sacred armor. A heavy sound was heard, and Queen Hilda instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. This was because the sacred armor absorbed most of the power from the palm. The remaining part of the wound was enough to make her spit out blood. It wasn't that she was so weak as the Empress of the Dragon Clan, but it was because of her current physical condition. The Dragon Clan's jewel was quickly providing her with the power she had been storing, but the origin that Tang Tianlin had stolen from her body could not be replenished. What was her current situation? Her body was very fragile, very fragile. However, because of the power stored in the orb, her strength was much stronger than before. Furthermore, with the divine armor's defense, Queen Hilda felt that she could handle it. You witch! After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Queen Hilda's eyes were filled with murderous intent due to the new and old grudges. The power that had been stored in the orb for many years was instantly locked into Quark's heart of the saint, that hadn't fully matured yet. Immediately, A terrifying killing intent erupted from the dragon race's empress. Murderous cries filled with murderous intent seemed to ring out all around her. Gongsun Ernyang saw this and frowned slightly surprised. You bitch, I haven't seen you for a while and you've improved a little. Boom 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 boom. With the help of Quark's incomplete Heart of the Sanctuary, Hilda Dragon Emperor was like a warrior who had gone berserk on the battlefield. She attacked Gongsun Ernyang in a frenzy. Her tremendous power was rising steadily, increasing the speed of her attacks. In just a few breaths, the originally calm Gongsun Ernyang gradually showed signs of avoiding the attack. Why are these two fellows fighting again? Nan Xiaonan's voice came from beside Boss Luo, who was watching the battle. Nan Xiaonan rolled up her sleeves and rubbed her forehead with her arm, looking tired as if she had just returned from moving bricks at a construction site. Mr. Luo, I've saved the people you wanted me to save. But they hurt themselves, so I can't do anything. None of the monsters in the demonic diagram have healing abilities. It's too biased. So, how did these two get into a fight? Boss Luo thought for a moment and said slowly, generally speaking, it's probably for the sake of the child. For the sake of their child? Nan Xiaonan could not help but blink. In other words, it's like the kind of fight between two parents in kindergarten? Something like that. Boss Luo nodded at this moment, then looked at Nan Xiaonan and suddenly asked, By the way, Lady Nan, did you meet Mr. Tang? Just touched me. Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth subconsciously at this moment, and her expression became flustered. She quickly said, No. We're just running into each other. I didn't touch him. No. He didn't touch me. No. We didn't touch each other. Then I'll believe Lady Nan, Boss Luo said with a casual smile. Nan Xiaonan was about to say something, but she was suddenly stopped by Boss Luo's words. She could not help but smile bitterly. Believe? Aren't you afraid that you'll crush a weak person like me? Lady Nan doesn't seem like such a weak person, Boss Luo said with a smile. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to swim freely in the cracks of the dimension. Nan Xiaonan squinted. If I say that the reason I can swim freely is that I've always been a salted fish, would you believe me? Chapter 1883. In the ruins, Miss Tina was trying her best to lift the heavy stones. Finally, in a pile of rocks, the maid successfully found the young man, Wally, who was buried here with broken hands. Master! Tina quickly jumped into the pit and helped the young Wally, who was in a sorry state with dirt all over his face, to sit up. At that moment, the young Wally looked at her by instinct. His lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something. Master, what do you want to say? You're in a terrible condition now. Tina said quickly. Drink these potions, they're the best ones. That guy made them. Although I don't like them, they're really good. The young man, Wally, suddenly swung his broken arm and slapped the small bottle away from Tina's hand. The servant girl's expression changed slightly. I don't want to hear anything about that guy. Young Wally clenched his teeth tightly and screamed. I still have the medicine myself. I have more. I don't need anyone to help me. As he spoke, a small bottle appeared out of thin air and fell to the ground. But Wally couldn't pick it up because his hands were cut off. Seeing this, the servant girl reached out to pick it up silently, but was pushed away by Wally's shoulder. I don't need anyone to pity me. I can do it myself. Tina laid on the ground. Just when she was about to get up, she saw young Wally lowering his head and picking up the small bottle on the ground with his mouth, like a hungry dog looking for food. He raised his head and crushed the bottle with his teeth. He even swallowed the fragments of the bottle and the potion. Then, he pursed his lips tightly and his body couldn't help trembling. Many granules quickly grew out of the wounds on his broken hands. At this time, the young Wally's face was extremely pale, but he stood up little by little. I've decided. I won't leave. Wally looked crazy. Stay here. No one can win this game. Don't even think about winning against me. Master. The servant girl looked at Wally in a daze. Young Wally calmed down at this time. He sighed slowly and said expressionlessly, "Tell Tiff she can wake up now. Tell her that I need her now. Although the chessboard's royal city circle is like the elven village, cutting off the connection between servants and masters. But as conjoined twins, you have the ability to break through this barrier. This is the most special and most important ability that belongs to me." "Yes." The servant girl nodded silently. Master Wally was right. That was why they were needed. From the fate of being spurned, they had the qualification to be needed. And they survived and had the names of Tiff and Tina. At this moment, he was somewhat surprised, because he could clearly see the battle between Empress Hilda and Second Madame Gongsun. It couldn't be said that the movements of Empress Hilda and Gongsun Ernyang were extremely slow in front of him. He could only see them very clearly. Old Tang had always been puzzled about one thing: how powerful was he now? "I always feel that even if I intervene in such a battle, it won't be very difficult." Such a thought flashed in Tang Tianlin's mind. He was soon shocked by his own idea and thought that it might be an illusion. Yes, it was just like one of the three great illusions in life: I can counterattack an illusion. At this time, he was approaching the depths of the Guardian's palace. However, on the way, a figure lying on the ground made Old Tang stop. He recognized the identity of the person lying on the ground. He had seen her before. She was the head maid of Princess Carol, Laura. Tang Tianlin remembered that when he first saw this head maid, he was indeed stunned, but he didn't have any thoughts. It was just that Laura always gave Old Tang a cold and unapproachable feeling. She was Princess Carol's servant, and he heard that she was a messenger from the Dragon Clan. Therefore, Old Tang had always avoided contact with her. But how could she be injured, and with such a heavy injury? At this time, looking at Laura's violent injury, her face was almost destroyed, and the terrible wound on her chest, Tang Tianlin couldn't help but frown. Should he say that she was worthy of being a messenger from the Dragon Clan? Even with such a heavy injury, she was still hanging on to her last breath and didn't completely die. That's right, Laura wasn't dead at this time, but she didn't have any reaction. She was just lying in this forgotten place. Perhaps in the next moment, she would completely swallow her last breath, if she didn't receive help. But in fact, this kind of serious injury might not necessarily be able to be cured. Tang Tianlin shook his head and directly walked past Laura. Don't go," a faint voice, almost inaudible, floated from behind Tang Tianlin. 697. 690. 8 Tha. 690. 9. His hands were crazily trembling, but he still persevered. But this task didn't seem to be something that could be completed by perseverance. He could feel that the black iron rod on his back seemed to be getting heavier and heavier. He didn't know where his mother got such a terrible black iron rod. But Mose still clenched his teeth and continued. He didn't have any intention of stopping. Not long ago, those crazy guys rushed into the palace from outside and rushed past him in large groups, but Mose didn't stop. They didn't take the initiative to attack Mose anyway. As for the terrifying giant's appearance and its subsequent defeat, it still didn't disturb this energetic big guy who was prostrating himself on the ground. "Mose, what are you doing here? Don't be noisy, you'll interrupt my counting." "Oh no, I forgot to count again. Damn it, you've ruined me." Mose was furious at this time. He raised his head and fiercely glared at the guy who interrupted him. However, after just a glance, Mose instantly opened his mouth wide and said in a panic, General, it's you. It's really you." At this time, the one who appeared in front of Mose was the general of Elnis Kingdom, Iron Face Marshal Jack. Not only Iron Face Marshal, but also Sword Saint Liulo, a group of black-armored soldiers, and finally the young messenger Tianyun Exin. "Mose, why are you lying here with a rod on your back? Hurry up and stand up." Iron Face Marshal frowned and shouted in a deep voice. He didn't have a way to deal with this guy. Big head Mose, not only was it a big head, it was also a big head. Even so, even Jack himself couldn't help but marvel at Moses' terrifying natural strength sometimes. No. My mother said that I can't stand up until I do 1,000. Then I added another 1,000. I forgot how many I did now. I'm dead, I'm dead. I have to do it again, Mose said with a bitter expression. Your mother? Jack frowned as if he was thinking about something. Sword Saint couldn't help but look at Jack as if he was asking, where did you pick up such a magical subordinate? I accidentally met him in the valley when I was encircling the remnants of the barbarian blood tribe. Jack quickly said, at that time I was accidentally hit by an enemy arrow and was injured. It was Mose who saved me. This child was born with great strength, but he came out alone. I saw that he was honest, so I took him in as a follower. I'm the #1 follower of the general's family. Mose looked at Liulo proudly and said, Old man, who are you? I don't think I've seen you before. Are you a friend of the general? This isn't the little guy. Little guy, you're here too. Following Moses' line of sight, one could see that he was looking at the young messenger hidden in the crowd, Messenger's Tianyun. However, the moment Mose recognized him, Messenger's Tianyun lowered his head, as if he wished he hadn't been recognized. What an interesting young man. Sword Saint Liulo shook his head. He hadn't seen such a spirited young man in a long time. It wasn't that he was fond of talent, but he just found him interesting. Young man, don't lie on the ground. Get up. No matter what reason you have, now is not the time to do such things. As he said this, Liulo reached out to grab the black iron rod on Moses' back. He said subconsciously, even if you're training with this thing on your back, it's too useless. This iron rod? Sword Saint's eyes narrowed. His entire body was bent over, frozen in place. His hand was still holding the black iron rod on Moses' back, but he couldn't lift it. He really couldn't lift it. With his strength as a kingdom's sword saint, a human sword saint, he couldn't lift this ordinary black iron rod, not even an inch. What's wrong? Jack obviously sensed that something was wrong with Sword Saint and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. This iron rod is strange. Sword Saint frowned and said, I can't lift it. You? Jack obviously didn't believe him, so he tried to lift it with his own hands. But even when he used both hands, he still couldn't lift Moses' rod. General, don't mention it. My black iron rod is really heavy and hard. If you mention it again, I'm afraid you'll hurt your waist. Mose said in fear and trepidation. My mother said that if an old man's waist can't be lifted, the lower half of my body will be ruined. Get up. Marshal Jack snorted. Mose, I order you to get up now. No. My mother said that if I don't finish, I'm not allowed to get up. Mose was in a dilemma. Are you not going to listen to my orders? Marshal Jack snorted. I haven't seen your so-called mother, but I'm right in front of you. Who do you listen to? Mose struggled for a moment, then his face became serious. I'll listen to my mother. General, you've raised me for 3 years, but my mother has raised me for more than 10 years. My mother is definitely older than you. You big head, Mose. At this moment, Jack didn't know whether to laugh or to cry or to fly into a rage out of humiliation. In the end, he sighed and said, Forget it, you should tell me why you are here. Also, where is your mother so that I can pay my respects to this hidden expert? My mother isn't tall? Mose said seriously. When I grew up, my mother only reached my chest. Mother! Mose was shocked. His head was stretched, and he stared at the 2 balls of light that were crazily colliding in the night sky. That was the battle between Gongsun Ernyang and Queen Hilda. That's Queen Hilda? Sword Saint Liulo couldn't help but be shocked. His face was full of astonishment, and he said in surprise, You're saying that the one who's fighting Queen Hilda equally is your mother? Yes. Mose nodded and then said, But they're not equally matched. My mother hasn't used her full strength yet. If she did, it wouldn't be like this. What would it be like? Sword Saint couldn't help but ask. the iron rod that he couldn't lift, and the fact that Gongsun Ernyang was fighting Queen Hilda, was defeated in front of him. What would it be like? Mose thought for a while, and then took a deep breath and said quickly, she would probably put her hands on her hips, and then raise her eyebrows. Then she would say loudly, Mose, you son of a b*tsh, I told you to plow the field, but you went to sleep in old Wang's daughter-in-law's room next door. I'll beat you to death, you son of a b*tch. It's very scary. Sacred Swordsman Ryuro instinctively glanced at Marshal Jack beside him. At this moment, the marshal replied with a deep gaze, see? Do you know my pain now? This is what this guy is like. He's the kind that can make you die of anger. Sword Saint shook his head, and then suddenly said in a low voice, I don't know about Mose's mother, but I didn't expect that she would be a hidden master who could force Hilda into such a situation. I'm afraid. Marshal Jack didn't say anything, and just looked at the Hall of Guardians in the depths of the palace. At this moment, a beam of light suddenly rushed into the sky from the Hall of Guardians. This beam of light was different from the one that defeated the terrifying giant and broke the Dragon Emperor enchantment. That beam of light was sharp and dazzling, but this one was extremely gentle. We have to be quick. Sword Saint Yulo frowned. Without waiting for Jack to react, he turned into a stream of light and charged towards the Hall of Guardians. It's almost done. Behind the pillar, Dr. Girth's voice sounded a bit solemn. The runes on the magic circle used for the summoning ritual had been fully unfolded. Obviously, the magic circle had absorbed enough blood of the royal family, and now it was releasing something. The mixed light rushed into the sky, and King Amos, who was in the center of the magic circle, had lowered his head. His chest was moving up and down lightly, but his breath was weak. At this moment, peace between man and nature suddenly stood up with her sword. Dr. Gores was startled, and said with a trembling voice, What do you want to do? I want to see if my sword can cut King Amos this time. Peace between man and nature shrugged, just once. At this time, Dr. Girth gritted his teeth and suddenly stood up. At this point, he couldn't keep silent anymore. If the summoning ritual was destroyed, he was afraid that he would never be able to leave the chessboard. Or even never. You forced me to do this, Dr. Gores said coldly. Peace between man and nature chuckled, and her finger flicked the blade of her sword. The sword hummed. At this moment, Dr. Gores picked up Sneeve, turned around and ran. Wait! I won't let you go. Peace between man and nature's sword was still humming, shaking his head. He jumped out and landed in the center of the summoning ritual, right in front of King Amos. Chapter 1884. Standing in front of King Amos, peace between man and nature seemed extremely calm, just as calm as King Amos. He lowered his head, and there was no blood on his body. Even the blood on his cut wrist had not dripped down for a long time. I believe you can still hear me, said peace between man and nature directly. You should give me a response, Your Majesty. King Amos moved as expected. He slowly raised his head, but his eyes were deeply sunken. He looked like an old man who was about to die. He used to be a middle-aged man in his prime, but now his hair had turned white. What response do you want me to give you? The Yamos king's voice wasn't loud, but it didn't stop. Mu Tianren could see that the Yamos king's eyes weren't weak at all. Instead, they were filled with a strange vitality. For example, you should resist or something like that. Peace between man and nature directly waved his sword, putting it on King Amos's neck. King Amos looked at him calmly. At this time, I should be saying something. Peace between man and nature suddenly said, but the result is the same whether you say it or not, so there's no need to say more. King Amos suddenly said, Look at me, I'm about to die. You dying by yourself is different from me killing you with my own hand. Peace between man and nature chuckled. With a shake of his wrist, the sword naturally swept towards King Amos's neck. Although this sword was not one of the 3 divine weapons in the world, it was still a rare weapon. With peace between man and nature's swordsmanship, it was as easy as drinking water for him to cut through gold and jade, and cut off the neck quickly. Stop! At this moment, a stone shot out and bounced off Mu of the Heaven's sword. The stone that bounced off the edge of the sword instantly shattered, and the sword was swept away. Mu of the Heavens took advantage of the momentum to spin his sword, changing from a slash to a stab in a split second, aiming for the space between the Yamos king's brows. Stabbing the heart often didn't kill people. Who knew if this person's heart had grown crooked? In order to avoid this situation, peace between man and nature liked to directly break the opponent's eyebrows, penetrate the opponent's brain, or directly cut off the opponent's head. I said stop. However, a loud shout was heard, and this extremely fast sword was still blocked. The strength of the rebound forced Mu Tianren to take a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. He looked at the person who forced him to step back, the person who was now standing beside King Amos, his teacher, the kingdom's sword Saint Liulo. Seeing this, peace between man and nature was quite calm. He even withdrew his sword, as if he had completely given up the intention to attack. He smiled faintly and said, "Since this is the teacher's request, as a student I will stop. I will witness the death of His Majesty, which is also not bad." Sword Saint Liulo shook his head. He knew that this student was eccentric, but he knew how to judge the situation better than anyone else. The reason why he gave up attacking was probably because he saw that King Amos really didn't have much time left to live. Waiting and attacking were indeed different in meaning, but peace between man and nature was obviously willing to give up the difference in meaning for the final result. A ruthless person. Right at this moment, a figure rapidly fell to the ground. Her body fiercely smashed into the ground, and the force of impact caused the ground to tremble a little. It was none other than Empress Hilda. After such a heavy impact, Queen Hilda quickly got up again. It seemed that she was just in a mess, but it didn't affect her movement at all. However, Gongsun Ernyang fell together with Queen Hilda. Gongsun Ernyang looked around and saw King Amos and the others in the summoning circle. She glanced at the activated circle and frowned. "You shouldn't have the fragment. How did you activate this circle? You didn't use Kalos." Queen Hilda, who had completely walked out of the deep pit, exclaimed, "Yamos, how could it be you?" She felt that a hidden and terrifying power was awakening in the Hall of Guardians. She hurried over but encountered Gongsun Ernyang. After a fierce battle, she finally found out that the blood sacrifice wasn't Princess Kalo, but King Amos himself. At this moment, Queen Hilda was very depressed. If she knew that it was King Amos himself, she wouldn't have fought Gongsun Ernyang so head-on. "You're here too, Hilda." King Amos smiled at this time. "You're the most beautiful person I've ever seen in your military uniform." "Where is Kalo?" Queen Hilda said angrily. "I can't sense her. Did you hide her or?" "She's fine, and she's doing very well. I got Gu to bring her to a safe place." The Yamos king slowly said. "Laura captured her and wanted to use her as a blood sacrifice for her old lover. However, there was a small problem in the middle. Perhaps it was because I took the initiative to perform the blood sacrifice, which disrupted that guy's original plan." She was casually thrown to the side. "Right, that guy's name is Varley, right?" Queen Hilda's eyes narrowed, as if to distinguish if King Amos was telling the truth. "You. Why did you do that? Aren't you afraid of death? Is this pity for me?" King Amos said faintly. "For me, it's really a luxury. To be able to get a trace of pity from you, the Dragon Empress. Humph, a night of husband and wife, 100 nights of grace." Gongsun Ernyang sneered at this time. "This bitch still has some redeeming qualities." Queen Hilda snorted angrily, but looked at Gongsun Ernyang with murderous intent. At this time, King Amos seemed to want to stand up, but Sacred Swordsman Liulo directly reached out to help him. The emperor of this country finally stood up, swaying. Sacred Swordsman Liulo frowned at this time. "How long can you last?" "Not much longer." King Amos smiled weakly. But it shouldn't be a problem when all the people who should come are here. Mr. Who wants to return the 2 god weapons to our country, do you plan to show yourself, or do you plan to hide and watch all of this? Actually, I just arrived. Following King Amos's words, Boss Luo's voice came from behind everyone. The boss walked out of the ruins calmly with Nan Xiaonan. King Amos smiled indifferently. Actually, I didn't know if you were here or not, I just guessed. Boss Luo said casually, usually, it's possible to guess. It's really nice to talk with you. King Amos smiled again, then shook his head. You're not here yet, Gu? At this time, 2 figures fell from the sky, or rather, they were thrown into the sky and then fell here. Their bodies were like mud. One was lying motionless while the other was full of annoyance and panic. These 2 people were Sneeve and Dr. Gores. A shadowy figure slowly emerged from the ground beside King Amos. He was hidden in a black cloak. It was the user of the god weapon 10-sided annihilation that Boss Luo borrowed, Gu. I met these 2 guys on the way back, so I brought them back, King Amos said indifferently. It doesn't matter whether I brought them back or not. They are too weak. Even if they stay here in the future, they won't be able to cause any trouble. After all, what I care about is the more threatening ones. As he said this, King Amos looked at Gongsun Ernyang and said seriously, Madam, I don't know your name. Gongsun Ernyang frowned, as if she thought of something, then said coldly, Mose, did you deliberately lure him to the king's city? He's a good kid. King Amos smiled and said, although he's a little simple-minded, he's very happy. Jack often praises him in front of me. Oh, by the way, Jack, are you planning to hide and watch the show? Peace between man and nature frowned subconsciously. At this time, he heard a lot of footsteps. He turned around and saw a man wearing a black iron mask slowly climbing up the stairs with a sword in his hand. Behind him, there was a group of warriors in black armor with murderous intent. Ha 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 ha. Yamos, sorry to keep you waiting. I'm here to kill you. Looking at the man with the black iron mask and the warriors in black armor, peace between man and nature couldn't help but open his mouth. Marshal. Jack? At this time, Gongsun Ernyang frowned. Queen Hilda also frowned. At this time, King Amos said indifferently, it seems that this time, everyone is here. Let's begin. A huge burst of light instantly erupted from the summoning rituals array. It rushed up to the sky, then rushed downwards, and actually covered the entire palace. Rings of light started to float. At this time, Gongsun Ernyang's expression changed slightly. She felt that the space in the palace seemed to be completely cut off from the outside world. At the same time, silently, the shadow of a huge warrior in golden armor was still standing in the middle of the palace. It was even bigger than the terrifying giant that Mr. Varley made. It just stood there quietly behind King Amos. Guardian. Dr. Girls raised his head at this moment and stared at the appearance of this huge golden-armored general in a daze. There was even a trace of horror in his eyes. Is it really the final guardian? No. No, the guardian shouldn't be so huge. Gongsun Ernyang frowned but didn't say anything. No one knew what she was thinking. At this time, King Amos suddenly raised his arm. At the same time, the huge warrior in golden armor behind him also raised its huge sword with both hands. This world shouldn't be enslaved by the dragons of the continent. This world shouldn't be wantonly plundered by outsiders. The Yamos king's voice slowly rang out. This is a world that belongs to us humans. As he spoke, the golden-armored general suddenly thrust his golden greatsword downwards, and shockingly, this golden greatsword was pointed at Queen Hilda. Yamos, how dare you! Feeling the terrifying power coming from the golden sword, Queen Hilda had no choice but to let out a roar. Using the massive amount of power stored in the orb, she poured it directly into the unformed O Sacred Heart, and created a giant black sword out of thin air. Then, she swung it fiercely at the golden sword. Boom! The sword lights collided, and the airflow instantly flipped the roof of the palace. Queen Hilda said angrily, "You can't kill me with this." "Then let's count this in." As the chaotic airflow surged, iron-faced Marshal Jack shouted and raised his hands high. A scepter that was emitting a dazzling light slowly fell into Marshal Jack's hands. He didn't hold this scepter for long. While holding it, he threw it directly at King Amos and shouted, "Yamos! This is what you want. I've made it for you." The moment this dazzling scepter fell into King Amos's hands, King Amos's old body was suddenly covered by a silver light. At the same time, a silver light burst out from the huge shadow of the golden warrior. Under the flickering light of gold and silver, the golden greatsword instantly cut Queen Hilda's black greatsword in half and cut it down. The ground was split, and the entire palace was split into two, starting from the Hall of Guardians. A bottomless crack appeared. At the edge of the crack, Queen Hilda sat on the ground in a daze. The sacred armor on her body was full of cracks, as if it would shatter with a light touch. "What is this? What kind of scepter is this? Why does it have?" Queen Hilda murmured to herself in a daze. "It's even more powerful than the 3 godly weapons. Dragon Breaker. This is impossible. Our world has been improving all the time." It was King Amos's majestic voice. The 3 godly weapons were indeed powerful, but we humans shouldn't only have the ability to make 3 godly weapons once. As long as we're alive, we'll make even more powerful godly weapons. This, Radiance of the King. I spent 20 years gathering all the power in this world. Finally, I've made it. Radiance of the King. Queen Hilda seemed to have thought of something, and she suddenly looked at Marshal Jack, who had provided this scepter to King Amos. "It's you. The one who has been wandering around the world, exterminating the remnants of the various countries. 20 years. Marshal Jack shouted. Unknowingly, it's been 20 years. The Radiance of the King. The scepter that was made with the blood of the royals of all the countries in the world. It's not complete yet, and it still lacks the blood of the royals. King Amos, I'll give it to you now." Then, Marshal Jack suddenly pulled out his sword, stretched his hand to the sky, and pulled the blade. Suddenly, a blood-red radiance was thrown into the scepter in King Amos's hand. Marshal Jack laughed crazily. "King Amos, I'll be waiting to kill you in the end." The blood of the royals, the blood of the royals? The second lady of public prosecutions frowned. From the moment the golden-armored general appeared, or rather, from the moment the entire palace was isolated, she felt an incomparably heavy pressure. This kind of pressure made it hard for her to breathe. Therefore, she didn't move, and dealt with the situation by remaining unchanged. However, the guardian of the kingdom summoned by King Yamos wasn't an array guardian that could be defeated by her, as she had once told Boss Luo. This golden armor general was definitely not summoned by the servants, and it was the final guardian to clear the level. "You're a royal?" Queen Hilda was shocked. "How can you be a royal? I slaughtered all the royals of Elnis, and only King Amos was left. There's no way there's anyone left." Marshal Jack sneered. "Who said I have the royal bloodline of Elnis? In this world, every country that is born naturally inherits a noble bloodline. There's not only one Elnis in this world." As he spoke, he glared at Queen Hilda with an incomparably furious gaze. At this moment, Marshal Jack took off the black iron mask on his face, revealing an ugly face that seemed to have been burned by a raging fire. "I am the King of Kadias, King Zayart, the Queen of the Dragons. You never thought that I'm not dead. Today is the day that the souls of the thousands of people of the Highland will witness your defeat. You're the Highlands, King Zayart." Queen Hilda got up with difficulty. This caused the divine armor on her body to shatter, and the fragments fell to the ground, forming a mess. Without the divine armor, her body would have been crushed by the impact of that attack. Suddenly, Queen Hilda laughed out loud. She stared at the man who held the radiance of the king, and suddenly became calm. "Yamos, you really are a terrifying person. For this day. You even doted on Carol so much. It was all for this day, wasn't it? The dragons shouldn't exist on the continent, King Amos said calmly, at least in my era. The golden sword slashed out again. Queen Hilda was injured, and standing was her limit. She could only watch the giant sword fall. Perhaps her life was about to come to an end. King Amos, you forced me. Queen Hilda took a deep breath, and her face instantly became ferocious. Then I won't be a dragon anymore. A black light rushed out of Queen Hilda's body and covered her whole body. Just as the golden greatsword was about to strike her head, Queen Hilda raised her hand and caught the greatsword that was several times larger than her body with her bare hands. At this moment, Queen Hilda's body suddenly split open. She actually expanded at a terrifying speed. Finally, a black dragon that was as large as a gold general appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was even bigger than the golden armored general. Its eyes were crimson red, and its wings were several kilometers long. Its 4 limbs were like 4 small mountains. It was so huge. This is Hilda's true form. Looking at the Queen of the Dragons, Marshal Jack couldn't help but mutter, I didn't expect it to be a black dragon. If this is really that bitch's true form, then I have to congratulate you. Suddenly, Gongsun Ernyang's voice slowly sounded. Although I don't know what you plan to do, you obviously don't know what you have awakened. What is it? Sword Saint subconsciously looked at Gongsun Ernyang, this mysterious hidden expert. Gongsun Ernyang stared at the black dragon with a serious expression and said in a low voice, Why did I only beat Hilda and not really kill her? Why didn't I really force her into a desperate situation? Because I know that once a woman goes crazy, she can really throw away her life. She is even more terrifying than a man. What you have awakened is the real mastermind behind the destruction of the gods and titans of the Golden Era. The destruction of the Golden Era. Sword Saint Leo's expression changed drastically. Every era will give birth to a protagonist who will lead history forward. Gongsun Ernyang quickly said, The great kings of history, the pioneers of a certain field. Because of the existence of these protagonists, the world will have breakthroughs again and again. The gods of the Golden Era occupied too many places, and the dragons of the continent were just a race that was enslaved. Hilda was probably chosen in that era. You can also say that she was controlled by fate, but she had always been resisting. But when she gave up on resisting and chose to become one with fate, becoming a new life, it became the black hand behind the scenes, the will. Hearing Gongsun Ernyang's words, King Amos, who was holding the glory of the king, was silent. Suddenly, he controlled the golden armor general again, and the sword directly swept out. The black dragon roared and directly waved its claws to meet the attack. The black dragon and the golden armor general were about the same size, and the fight between the two was like 2 mountains colliding in the air. The entire sealed royal palace was directly shattered. A huge rock directly broke out of the ground due to the violent tremors. Nan Xiaonan saw this and quickly controlled a monster to shatter the huge rock. She looked around nervously and said in horror, Mr. Luo, the mastermind mentioned by Gongsun Ernyang, could it be the chessboard itself? Something like that. Boss Luo nodded. Lady Nan, didn't you already know that the original will of the chessboard was shattered and became the fragments that you collected? However, the chessboard is still running. Naturally, it means that a new will has replaced the previous one. Then what should we do? Nan Xiaonan frowned. The battle of the chessboard this time? Is there no end to it? How can it be? Boss Luo said indifferently. It just made things happen earlier. Actually, I should have missed these. Now that I think about it, it's because of me. I said something that caused part of it to happen earlier. So? Boss Luo suddenly looked at Nan Xiaonan and asked, Lady Nan, since we entered the king's city, until now, there are many people gathered here for different purposes. Among these people, if you were to choose one to help, who would you choose? I don't quite understand what you mean. Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth and said, Mr. Luo, what do you mean by help? And, among these people here? Yes, among these people here. Boss Luo nodded and waved his hand. Many light screens appeared behind him. On these light screens there were different people. King Amos, Marshal Jack, Sword Saint Yulo, Gong Sun Ernyang, Queen Hilda transformed into a black dragon. Even the peace between man and nature. Dr. Gores and Sneeve, who were very miserable. Nan Xiaonan even saw Tang Tianlin in one of the light screens. She even saw the young Wali who was supposed to have his hands cut off. At this time, the young Wali was maintaining a hiding posture. Obviously, he was hiding somewhere, but he didn't know that he was exposed in this light screen. Among these individuals who have been given a special mission in this era, Boss Luo's voice sounded softly in Nan Xiaonan's ears. Who do you think is the most valuable? Who do you think is the most suitable to help? What kind of standard do you use to judge this choice you made? Nan Xiaonan looked at these people in a daze, and suddenly felt her scalp go numb. Help one of them? He doesn't want to do it directly. Does he want to borrow my hand? It was an act that affected an entire era. In other words, it was equivalent to directly interfering with the development of a world. It was a great taboo in the void dimension, and if not for the powerful beings of the void, there was no telling what would happen if they simply interfered and died. It was true that she had broken free from the shackles of her original world and left, but that was not a path that she had forcefully created. It was the destruction of an entire era, a bloody path that countless living beings had forcefully created at the cost of their lives. She was merely the only lucky one in that war of transcendence. Nan Xiaonan traveled freely in the void dimension and never got involved in these things. She would leave immediately after she got the benefits in the void dimension. She would plan before taking action. She would scatter the ashes when she killed someone and run away when she was full. She was so low-key that she didn't have many friends for so many years. Now, she was asked to interfere in the era of the chessboard world? Mr. Luo. Nan Xiaonan had a bitter expression at this time. You guys are too sophisticated. Can I not participate? Can I massage your legs for you? Boss Luo chuckled. Didn't you say that you want to stay by my side and get the power of freedom? If you really want to stay by my side, maybe in the future you will participate in more similar or even more intense events. It's not just a single subworld. It could also include the limits of what you know, or even the entire dimensional crevice beyond the limits. Do you intend to make such preparations? Nan Xiaonan's consciousness went blank, and her whole body trembled. A small salesperson in the financial street was suddenly invited to a meeting on the top floor with a group of bosses who could influence the overall situation of the economy. Maybe this was the feeling? You'll die. You'll really die. Nan Xiaonan trembled. You'll be doomed eternally if you don't handle it well. You've just escaped from the small world. You don't have to get involved in such a horrible situation. Isn't it better to be a salted fish? You'll die. Boss Luo just looked at her calmly at this time. Nan Xiaonan gritted her teeth. Mr. Luo, if I hand in a blank paper, will I lose the chance to take the exam in the future? Boss Luo still looked at her calmly without speaking. Nan Xiaonan's scalp went numb. She had never felt so excited before. Indescribable existence. Indescribable existence. I'm going all out this time. I bet you're really an indescribable existence. You're a guy who can really wrestle with the leaders of those big forces in the dimensional rift. I will give you all my life. Give it to you. You are a terrible guy. You got me killed. You have to be responsible for me. If you don't take care of me this time, I will rape you countless times in my mind. All kinds of things you can't imagine. I will do it once, 1,000 times. I will make you pose in all kinds of shameful positions. Without waiting for Boss Luo's response, Nan Xiaonan suddenly stretched out her finger and pointed at one of the screens. I will bet on this guy. Boss Luo looked at the screen that Nan Xiaonan pointed at with surprise and asked curiously, "Why did you choose this person?" Nan Xiaonan said with a sad face, "Do I have a choice? If I can't tell who you like and who you don't like, how can I enter the exam?" "I like?" Boss Luo smiled and shook his head. "Lady Nan, you are really smart." Nan Xiaonan sighed and was about to cry. "I was wrong, I was really wrong. I shouldn't have been greedy for that delicious taste of your hometown," Boss Luo said. "Since you have made a choice, then we will follow it. As for the result, we will see." "Wait, one last question." Nan Xiaonan braced herself and said, Suppose I made the wrong choice?" Boss Luo said indifferently, "Since you want to work by my side, I hope that my employees won't make any big mistakes. A mistake that really doesn't exist, not a mistake that I want to make." Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but complain in her heart. "Do you think you are right?" Chapter 1885. The voice of the wind suddenly became heavier. In fact, after midnight, there was already thunder and the sound of wind. Now, it was raining heavily outside the castle. The heavy rain came suddenly like a guest in a hurry. Even in the brightly lit banquet hall, the light of the lightning could still be clearly felt. And here, Miss Gong Lina was just calmly tidying her nails. The chessboard game entered a semi-automatic mode. As the masters, they could know what was happening in the chessboard world through the rapidly flashing instructions. What kind of experience was this? It was probably the experience of a text-type AFK game. It was quite boring. Of course, for the players who were addicted to this kind of game, perhaps they couldn't stop. This was a game where the more they liked it, the more they liked it. Those who didn't like it didn't even have a start. The world was in a violent turmoil. The warriors were about to face a nightmare of destruction. The plunderers would be punished eventually. This was their punishment. It stopped. Miss Gong Lina's movements stopped. She subconsciously looked up and found that her only opponent, Miss Maid, was also looking at the chessboard. "The notification from the chessboard stopped," Miss Gong Lina said again. "It seems so." Miss Maid gave a rare positive response to Miss Gong Lina. "This is their punishment. The last notification I received." "Me too." Miss Gong Lina paused for a moment before her expression darkened. She subconsciously looked at the time and realized that Chef Narson, who had gone to prepare the food, had been gone for too long. The steward who had gone to look for him had also been gone for too long. Of course, there was also the coachman who came for her. The chessboard seemed to be undergoing some unknown changes, at least Miss Tsimic thought so. At this moment, a faint sound attracted her and Miss Maid's attention at the same time. On the ground, Tiff, the elder sister of the twin maids who was knocked down by Mr. Butler because of sudden insanity, slowly sat up. Her eyes were blank, as if she didn't know what had happened. She stared blankly at Gong Lina and Miss Maid, who were the only ones left beside the chessboard. Oh, there was also a black dog lying on the ground, looking around stealthily, but not moving at all. "What is this place?" Tiff said subconsciously. Gong Lina glanced at him and said faintly, "Are you awake? If you are, go and see what happened to your butler and chef. Or are you saying that they already feel that they can neglect me as a guest without the permission of your host?" "Butler." Tiff couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. Then, she reacted and quickly got up. I'll go look for him right away." Seeing her running over in a panic and pushing open the door of the banquet hall, the eldest daughter of the Tsimus family shook her head and said calmly, like the elder sister of the host, "I'm really sorry, my little brother likes to hire weird guys." Miss Maid just smiled from the bottom of her heart. It was a fake smile, and it was obvious that she was being perfunctory. Miss Gong Lina frowned at this time, but she didn't lose her temper. She began to slowly stroke a ring on her finger. An emerald gem on the ring seemed to flash at this time. "Right," Miss Gong Lina suddenly said at this time, "do you know that servants can take things out of the chessboard world? That's really incredible," Miss Maid said with a surprised expression. It was obvious that she was just saying that in a perfunctory manner. Miss Gong Lina frowned, and when she was about to say something, the door of the banquet hall suddenly opened. But this time, it wasn't the evil wind outside the castle that blew the door open. A figure was standing outside the door at this time. It was Mr. Nelson, who went to prepare food earlier. Miss Gong Lina felt strange. Tiff just left to look for food. Logically speaking, they didn't meet on the way. Nelson? What happened? But soon, Miss Gong Lina felt something was wrong with Mr. Nelson at this time. Nelson didn't wear the chef's hat that he only took off when he was sleeping. His face looked quite dirty, and his clothes were also dirty and torn as if he had been attacked. Chef Nelson walked 2 steps forward expressionlessly. Suddenly, he reached out his hand and his lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something. His face suddenly became panicked, and his eyes were full of despair. His body had actually completely withered in an instant. It was as if he was a piece of human skin that had been dried under the sun and had lost all moisture. Strangely and horribly, he directly fell to the ground. At this time, behind Nelson's body, which was the entrance of the door, stood the elder sister of the twin maids who had just woken up, Tiff. What was more strange was that there were dozens of huge green plant roots that looked like tentacles beside Tiff, which were constantly waving. "I met Mr. Nelson on the way," Tiff said indifferently. At this time, Tiff said indifferently, "Just in time to bring it to you, Miss Gong Lina. What a pity. If Mr. Nelson didn't want to hide here in a hurry, perhaps he wouldn't have died. He even wanted to greet me, but he was still so friendly." Looking at the strange smile on Tiff's face, they could imagine what had happened in the short time outside the door. "What do you want to do?" Miss Gong Lina frowned. Her face was full of dignity. "Master said it's time to end this game." The maid laughed strangely and said, "He said it's too boring, and this game didn't meet his expectations at all. You or the thing behind you. This should be something that Wally brought out from inside, something that Gores has been studying all this time, right? It turns out that it has been raised so big without anyone noticing. It seems that a lot of nutrients have been given to it. Those guys who failed the chessboard game." Gong Lina sneered. "However, one of the most important rules of the chessboard game is that no one is allowed to interrupt the progress of the game. This chessboard was first discovered by me, and I gave it to Wally. I know this better than anyone else." "That's too much." Tiff still laughed strangely. "You know the dangers of the chessboard. But you still let Master Wally explore the world inside again and again. As an elder sister, it's too much to treat her younger brother like this. Tiff wouldn't treat her younger sister Tina like this. It's just a conjoined monster." Miss Gong Lina snorted coldly. "Your existence depends on the blood of the Simisai family, but you dare to be so rude to me, the legitimate heir of the Simisai family. Perhaps I should really discipline these disobedient servants on behalf of Wally." After saying that, Miss Gong Lina's eyes flashed with a trace of blood-red color. At the same time, circles of dark red ripples floated. It seemed to be some kind of sound, a sound that was completely targeted at Tiff. Under the erosion of the dark red ripples, Tiff suddenly showed a painful expression. She held her head with both hands, grabbed her hair fiercely, and screamed miserably. Seeing this, Miss Gong Lina just showed a faint smile, but the smile soon stopped. The punishment of a superior vampire to an inferior vampire is like this? Tiff, who was originally in great pain, suddenly calmed down. She put on that strange smile again. "Miss Gong Lina, is Tiff's performance okay? How did you?" Gong Lina couldn't help but frown. "Didn't Wally bite you?" "No, the blood flowing in your body is indeed the blood of Simisai. Because Tiff is not alone now." Her body began to float. It was the roots of those huge and thick plants that lifted her body up. No, it was the roots of many of these plants that grew out of her body. From under her maid's skirt, dense plant roots grew out explosively at this time. Tiff's skin turned green at this time. She seemed to have completely turned into a huge plant at this time. Those huge roots grew out countless fine rhizomes, crawling all over the banquet hall. Seeing this, Miss Gong Lin sighed instead. So, it seems that Wally is really at his wit's end. He actually pinned his last hope of counterattack on you? How pitiful, my brother. A dark red power surged in the body of the eldest daughter of the Simasai family. This was the power of the high-ranking noble vampire, which was also the power of the top bloodline in this bloodline clan. There was a faint crackling sound in the air. Those plants that covered the banquet hall were agitated crazily at this time, as if they were fighting against something. The air became heavy, and cracks began to appear on the floor. Even before the fight, this eldest daughter of the Simasai family gave a huge pressure just by the leakage of power. Tiff, who had completely turned into a plant, made an extremely sharp and harsh sound at this time. Beside her, dozens of roots rose up, vertical, and hardened like dozens of sharp steel bars, shooting directly at Gong Lina. Seeing this, the eldest daughter of the Simasai family opened her mouth, which represented the appearance of the fangs of the vampire, gloomy and terrifying. This should be a luxurious and spacious banquet hall. Perhaps it would soon be destroyed by them. Seeing that the surrounding windows had been blown away by the airflow, and the heavy rain outside the castle came in with the wind, Black Hound and Black Dragon lying on the ground were so scared that they directly held their heads, shivering and hiding under the table where the chessboard was placed. Only Miss Maid was still standing there. Standing in the chaotic airflow, the evil wind blew her long dress and messed up her hair at the same time. That's enough. She stretched out her hand, gathered the messy hair back, and sighed softly. Her arm suddenly swung down, and at the moment, a finger snap was naturally born from her fingertips, followed by dozens of black butterflies flying from Miss Maid's fingertips. This can't even be considered as killing time. Her voice was so clear that it seemed to be right next to Tiff and Gong Lina's ears. However, the moment they heard her voice, the black butterflies quietly landed on their bodies. But my master likes it. All of this is new to him, after all, he is still young. Miss Maid's voice was elegant and calm. It's understandable that he likes new things. As a servant, of course, I have to take care of my master's curiosity, but... The voice took a sharp turn. They had never heard a voice that was more like a cold wind blowing from a very low place. But aren't you a bit too noisy? What about me? At this moment, I don't know why, but I'm inexplicably irritated. The butterflies bloomed, and the black flame instantly burned Tiff and Gong Lina, no matter what their purpose was, what secrets they had, and what they wanted to do. I'm irritated, so I want to do something. Even what fate had arranged for them didn't seem to matter at this moment. It was like a complete building falling down in an instant, the Great Wall of China collapsing in the blink of an eye, and a huge crack was split open by something in the clear sky. Like this. This was the feeling of destroying everything that was neat, orderly, or established, or should have been, for no reason at all. At this moment, the whole castle was covered with a layer of black flame. The plants that had unknowingly covered the whole castle were directly burned up at this moment. A miserable scream sounded from the depths of the castle. It seemed to be the source of these plants. Miss Maid's 5 fingers were slightly open at this moment, and a black flame was tumbling and jumping between her fingertips, and finally disappeared. On the ground, Tina and Gong Lina were burnt black, and no one knew whether they were dead or alive. Miss Maid said expressionlessly, I feel much better." While saying, Miss Maid's eyes moved down. Black Dragon and Black Hound, who were hiding under the table, were staring at her. They dared not to move, dared not to move. Miss Maid said coldly, "Aren't you hungry?" Black Hound and Black Dragon's eyes widened again. A burnt smell came, and soon all their olfactory nerves were controlled. They couldn't help but greedily look at Tiff and Gong Lina not far away. "Go," Miss Maid said indifferently, after waiting for so long, medium rare. "Woof, woof,"